Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto finds Kushina in Wave and she is badly injured part 2. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. I see. So your clan has been like this for years now, have been corrupted beyond any kind of help and are in the belief thinking they are the stronger than Kami herself. Not to mention you've been marked as their slave and were to be used as a breeding stock for being the strongest female out of the whole clan itself. Naruto spoke summarizing everything he had been told. It only had been an hour since Konoha was leveled and now the party of 4 were on the trail to the Uchiha clan compound. He had been told of everything the Uchiha had been plotting, most of which he didn't care about, but the part of marking Makoto as a slave and was to be used as a breeding stock just irked him to no end. True, he didn't know Makoto well and was suspicious of her, very much so. But if there was one thing he hated above all else, it was women used as objects and personal fuck toys. He'd seen enough of that doing missions for the clan and his personal travels. Bandits' camps, villages filled with poverty, and public brothels. All of which he'd seen to his disgust the women used in such ways. Those places were wiped off the map the same day. He'd freed any and all women from their treatment as well as killing those that put them into such a thing. Yeah, what's worse is that the elders of the clan that live by the old ways have been planning to use a seal on me since I'm the only one that's fought against these rights. The seal would make me nothing more than a mindless drone that would follow their bidding without a single second of hesitation. Just thinking about them putting that on me. Makoto spoke before she started to tremble from a mixture of disgust and fear. Kushina seeing this wrapped her friend in a hug which the teen welcomed crying into her shoulder. Kushina pat her back gently while looking toward Naruto with a pleading look in her eyes that was something he couldn't fight. He'd wiped villages off the map, destroyed armies, fought and beat in Biju. But Kushina's pleading violet eyes was the one thing he just couldn't beat. Akemi saw her former container looking at Naruto with a pleading look and saw how much Naruto was losing under her gaze. It was quite amusing really, to see someone of such power and control be beaten by just a gaze. Sighing he spoke, "Very well, I will deal with the clan but, after which we must leave. Alright." He didn't like helping a former Konoha nin but, if Kushina trusted her enough then he'd do it. Besides he has been itching to give those Uchiha an ass kicking anyway. He missed the victory sign Kushina gave both Akemi or Makoto but, did hear the slightly giggling of the three. Quirking an eyebrow he turned only to see them all blinking innocently at him. Shaking his head he turned back around not seeing the big-ass grin on Kushina's face, the vulpine one on Akemi's or the small smile on Makoto's. As they ran through the forests heading for the Uchiha compound Akemi looked upon Naruto's giant form and gained a curious look in her eyes. "Anyo, Naruto-kun?" The man just gave her a glance. "Yes Akemi?" The Biju just sped up beside him and spoke. "I don't get something, it's been 10 years and I remember you being very tall even at your age but, how did you become this tall? Or the matter of how you're still able to move at such speeds like you are." This got both Kushina and Makoto's attention as well since it didn't cross their minds till Akemi mentioned it. Naruto sighed, "Honestly I don't know but, I think it's from my father's side of the family. Everything I am right now makes me feel like it was from my father's side and, I'm guessing he was a giant or some kind of half-breed to a giant. All I know is that this is my full height and has been like this for the last 2 or 3 years. I hid in a henge so I wouldn't be alerted to nearby villages like Iya or Konoha." Akemi nodded with this until she continued. "I see," she said still curious of why he, a human, was this tall. She'd seen giants before, some ranging from 50 feet tall to shockingly enough 500 feet tall. "I'm just glad I have a way to shift this form into a more normal one." This made Kushina blink before looking at him with a curious gaze. "Shift? What do you mean?" He stopped before looking at Kushina. He reached out with his senses and didn't sense anyone nearby so he spoke. "Well, I have 2 forms basically. One is the form you see before you which I just use when I go into battle but, for public areas I use my normal form. I can shift in between these forms at will. But it's such an annoyance." She just nodded at this. "Now, let's go." With that they sped toward to the Uchiha clan knowing tonight would be one to be remembered for years to come. Uchiha compound main gate. Arriving at the gate while dispatching the guards or snapping their necks in Naruto's case. The group arrived upon the Uchiha crested gates, Makoto standing between Kushina and Akemi. Her eyes were practically glaring at the gates in clear disgust and hatred. Naruto took a step forward at the gate and placed his hand upon it. Now, I'm gonna come out with it and say, I won't be showing a single shred of mercy. Whether they be woman, man or child, none shall survive this night. This is my warning to you, Uchiha Makoto. Tonight will be the last time you ever see the clan again. Makoto closed her eyes before letting out a sigh. I know, and I don't care. This clan, this practical hell needs to be destroyed, wiped off the face of world. Tonight, the clan needs to die. All of them. Naruto, looking into her eyes and saw not a shred of hesitation, he nodded. Very well then. Bear witness. 2. He bares his fist before swinging it upon the gate. It creaked upon protest of his massive titan-like strength before it shot off like a rocket, crushing houses and the logged walls. His fist outstretched while his eyes glared from the shadows of his bangs. The end of this pathetic excuse of a clan. His voice so cold yet demonic it made Kushina, Makoto and Akemi herself have a shiver travel down their spines. The attack got the attention of the clan when many started to run out of their houses only to see Naruto's hulking form at the gate with one of their own Uchiha there beside him. Soon enough their confused faces changed to enraged ones. Who are you, intruder? And why have you come? Shouted one Uchiha. Naruto ignored the man as he took a step forward, his feet making the area shake with each step he took. Many were a bit shaken by the look in the man's eyes and his sheer size. Walking up to the first Uchiha in his sights, he brought up his hand and spoke with a tone that just sent a shiver down all of the Uchihas in the area. What I'm doing here is of no concern for you, fool, only that I am cleansing the world of your filth. Die. Trash, and with but a swipe of his hand. The Uchiha was batted away, most assuredly his entire broken by the massive boulder-sized hands and right through 4 houses and the wall itself. Then without warning, he charged at another group. Being unable to defend themselves in time, he brought down his other hand. It engulfed into the blue sphere. Once it hit the ground, the Uchiha didn't even have time to scream. A shift in the earth was their only warning before a slab of earth rose up from behind them and utterly shadowed their forms. Looking up, their eyes widened before it fell. Squelch. The sound of bodies being crushed sounded the area, the immense pressure silencing the now dead Uchiha. The flesh pounded into the deep dirt, the bones shattered and crushed into dust, and the blood imploding from their bodies from the pressure like a balloon seeping from the ground itself, mixing and churning it into a reddish-brown color. Ignoring this, he stepped right onto the slab, earning another wet fleshy squelch. Akemi smirked at this as the blood just seeped more out of the ground and onto Naruto's boot. Yet he showed not a slight of hesitation or disgust for what he did. Even Kushina was used to his brutal ways, if albeit were now a bit more ruthless, but was used to such, remembering the times in her earlier memories. Makoto, though, didn't have such luxuries. She was frozen on the spot for a few seconds to readjust to what she just saw. Yes, she had killed before, earned her rights as a shinobi, but what she just saw made everything she's seen in the war look normal, if that's the right word. She shook herself out of her stupor and continued on. She knew things like this were gonna happen, and she didn't have time to slow down and become hesitant. She had the chance to gain a new life. Even if it meant sacrificing her blood and clan for such a thing, she would do it. Besides, they deserved it, for the curse of the clan would have assuredly followed a generation in the future. It would be easier to just wipe it off the face of the planet before it could do any more harm. She soon followed after them, never knowing Naruto's eyes were on her the whole time. This was more than just a purge to the clan, it was also a test as well. A test of loyalty of sorts, something he needed to do and see if Makoto was truly serious about coming with them. Despite his actions, he needs to know she was truthful in her words. Her actions though said it, though albeit she was hesitant, she was determined to go forward, down the path of a traitor, but on the paved road to a new life filled with mysterious adventures, with many twists and turns, filled with blood, death. Hey! You've gained some, but not all, of my trust, Makoto, but you have done well. Walking forward, he gained a very cold smirk that made Akemi herself shiver and would make Lucifer himself flinch. This night would be one to be remembered. Too bad the only witnesses besides themselves would be dead, and the deities themselves would only be able to watch the unfolding of such a slaughter. Let the purge begin. his voice carrying out through the whole clan compound like a sonic boom. And then the slaughter began. 3 hours later, clan home compound. It had only been 3 hours since their arrival, and in just that short amount of time, the three girls witnessed why exactly Naruto was famed for his actions in the war. In just that small amount of 3 hours, Naruto himself, without a shred of help from any of them, massacred and murdered any and all Uchiha in his path. Buildings fell beneath his feet, women and children were swiftly killed just by his massive killing intent itself, making their hearts implode from the pressure. The men were all just butchered. Limbs were torn off, bones were shattered to dust by his massive feet and fists. His giant Zanbato untouched throughout it all. They all swept through the compound like a raging tornado, with Naruto himself being the center of it all, sweeping it up like anything and everything in his path was but a speck of nothingness to him. Frankly, since the man could pick up a building with his hand alone and without the least sign of stress and throws it into a group of Uchihas before igniting a time-delaying explosive tag. Before them though was the head's home, the very place where the leader, clan head and its heir lived. But they weren't alone. Oh no, they weren't alone. Before them was a literal army of Uchiha that all regrouped to their clan head's home, hoping, no, praying they combined with their almighty clan head they can defeat this monster in human skin. They were all that remained of what was left the once well-known Uchiha clan, reduced to nothing but a handful of what used to be a small village's worth. Many were injured in just the crossfire of Naruto's slight small war with the clan itself, some worse than others. But all still had one thing they all had, and that was the immense fear that was adamantly clear in all their eyes at Naruto's giant form looming over them. A mere apparition behind his back showing that of a being behind him. Its glowing yellow eyes showed many things, but the one most clear was that of bloodlust. Demon. He's a monster. A devil, muttered one terrified Uchiha, his form all but shaking like a leaf. Naruto seemed to hear the man and gave him a piercing stare that right then and there sent the man into complete hysterics. It was like his mind and soul was bashed repeatedly by multiple sledgehammers. Soon enough his eyes rolled to the back of his head as foam erupted from his mouth. Falling back, he landed at the feet of another Uchiha, this one shaking at what just happened to his fellow clansmen. Taking a step forward, making sure the three behind him were safely secure, he spoke, "Now stop wasting my time. Bring out your pathetic excuse of a coward clan head, or so help Kami-sama herself I will beat and tear it out of each and every one of you." His voice booming like a silent shockwave. His voice making the surrounding buildings creak in protest by the small but silent shockwave. "There is no need, boy," was the voice of an old yet seasoned man. Looking up at the doors, he could see a man well dressed like a warrior and stood like one as well. Dressed in a normal shinobi attire except for a katana held within his hand. The man had a tan tone with pure black eyes that were filled with hatred yet firmness of that of a leader. His hair was spiky black with most of it going past his neckline. Two bangs framed his face as a scar on his chin in the shape of an X. Behind this man was none other than Uchiha Fugaku. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the man. He knew this man despite not knowing his true name. He knew his alias from the bingo book. And truthfully he couldn't believe it and also couldn't help but smirk. "Well, I'll be damned, I never thought you of all people were this wretched clan's head. It's been a while, hasn't, since we last saw each other? And since our last fight. Isn't that right? Ano Mikado. And no Ibata, Flame Emperor. Avatar of Fire." The man's eyes only narrowed much more as those that heard the name gasped utterly in pure shock. Kushina blinked confusingly, as did Akemi, while Makoto herself was in a state of pure shock. "It has been a long time since I was called that name, but I am sorry I have given up that title long ago. My time as that person has ended and now I'm just a man that leads his clan. Though I can't say it is a pleasure seeing you again." Naruto's smirk just grew wider. "Ah yes, last time we fought it was during the end of the Second War. It is also where you got that scar. Am I right?" The man just twitched while faintly touching the X scar on his chin before sighing. Looking back at the man he hated above all, "I no longer go by the name. For my true name is Ozai. Uchiha Ozai, and I am the clan head of the Uchiha clan. You, sir, have attacked it for reasons unknown, and I shall fulfill my role as the leader of this clan and eliminate you. Like I failed to do all those years ago." Naruto just closed his eyes and shook his head before clenching his fists together. The wind suddenly picked up with high speeds, with it swirling just around Naruto and Ozai, leaving just enough room for their fight. Looking over his shoulder, he looked at the three ladies behind him and spoke. Kushi-chan, Akemi, Mikoto. While I take this man, you go and take care of the stragglers, they shouldn't even be a problem. They nodded before leaving, only for Naruto to shout. Mikoto. Said woman stopped and looked back, only to see the deadly look in Naruto's golden slitted eyes. This is your chance to prove yourself. Do not hesitate. Slay any and all that get in your way. Prove to me you are willing to do everything to abandon this life of which you bear. And you will gain the freedom you so desire. If not, you will die. Along with your clansmen, be damned what Kushi-chan says. I will kill you. Understood? She just stood there for a minute before nodding with a determined look in her eyes. Seeing this, he sent her off, before he turned his attention back at Ozai. Seeing his impatient scowl, he smirked before grasping Chaos Eater in his grasp. Ozai, seeing this, grasped the handle of his katana while eyeing the man in front of him warily. He was very curious as to why Mikoto was betraying the clan and her reasons, but right now he had to completely focus on this fight, or otherwise he is going to die this time. Now Ozai. Come. It's time we finished our last fight. I know you're stronger than that old brittle fool Hiruzen, so I want to enjoy this fight a bit. Now come. His baritone voice cracking the ground itself. Ozai sighed before slowly pulling out his katana as a red hue outlined his body. Closing his eyes, he circulated his chakra through his system, channeling it and morphing it into the right direction. All for this fight. Snapping his eyes open, Ozai's body erupted in flames, it being that of not orange flames or yellow, but pure red crimson, the flames of hell itself. Tightening his grip on his katana, he willed the flames to engulf his blade as well. After it did so, he looked back up at Naruto to see him now adorning a serious firm stone face. The giant, pulled out Chaos Eater, the giant blade dwarfing his katana in size and length. But that is irrelevant. What matters is the skill to wield a blade. You don't have that. You're nothing but a child with a stick. Yet he knew this man before him was a master with a blade, for he knew it to be true. Good, you're ready. Now, let's begin. His shout signaling the start of their final and last duel. With a jump they disappeared before appearing inches from each other, and with a mighty swing their blades. Boom! Fire and dust erupted into a giant swirling ball as their blades met. Flames flickered all on the ground as the ground itself shook and cracked under their mighty clash. The major shockwave from their blades meeting shattered all buildings near them and in a 1-mile radius. The swirling vortex around them seemed to rise and grow in length and width as the sky itself turned black from the first clash. It was like the start of a fight between two titans. Brandishing his blade, Ozai switched it with his left hand before doing a few hand signs, them being nothing but a blur, but to Naruto he was all too familiar to the speed. Take this, Kaden. Dai Enden, fire release. Big flame bullet. A literal meteor of fire shot from his mouth in a stream at Naruto. Seeing this, he shifted his blade before swinging it upward while kicking the man's blade away. Spinning in the air, he gathered chakra into Chaos Eater before swinging it diagonally at the incoming ball of flame and shouted, Saurukato, Soul Cut. An arc of purple and yellow energy shot off Chaos Eater and clashed with the fireball. Before it went through the blazing ball and towards the shocked Ozai. The ball itself slowly sliding from each other before imploding into nothing but spark and flame. Reacting quickly, Ozai rolled out of the way and watched in slight amazement and a little hint of fear that the attack all but cut right through the ground like a hot knife through butter and cleaved through multiple buildings and clansmen that were in the way of the attack. By Kami. What an attack. Don't get distracted. A voice boomed over him. Looking up, he saw Naruto bring down his fist with his sword coming from his left. Moving purely on instinct, he rolled out of the way of the punch with the fist slammed into the ground, shaking the area before he got into a handstand and sprang up, avoiding the swing. Planting his foot on Naruto's right hand that wielding Chaos Eater, Ozai grinned before doing a pinwheel kick, kicking Naruto in the face multiple times before flipping into the air. Spinning his blade in his hands as he watched Naruto get slightly disorientated by the sudden attack, he channeled his chakra through the spinning blade, making his burst into flame before he grasped the handle and sliced horizontally at Naruto. Barizasuka, Blaze Scar. And with that 3 flaming arcs shot out of his blade in a giant sweeping motion toward Naruto. Noticing it at the last minute, he spun Chao Cedar in his hand, increasing its velocity, making it into a proverbial shield. It did its job by blocking the flames. That is before Naruto sensed something. Looking up, he saw Ozai in the air bringing down his blazed engulfed sword. Barayazubarahu, Blaze Barrage. That's when he in a blur started to swing his weapon multiple times in the air, releasing countless upon countless fire arcs rapidly at Naruto. Letting out a small curse, he channeled energy into his fist, making it be engulfed by a blue sphere that which Ozai narrowed his eye at. Swinging his fist upward, he let out a punch that which left blue cracks in the air itself. Soon enough those many arcs rapidly started to disperse right before they hit him inches away from his body. It was like they were hitting an invisible wall of steel. Once it was over, Naruto reacted and slammed his sword into the ground before rapidly doing hand signs that with speeds Ozai couldn't catch. Eat this. Raiden. Gion, lightning release. False darkness. Before he opened his mouth as a spear of lightning shot out at speeds Ozai couldn't comprehend. Noticing he was still in the air, he did the only thing he could do. He spun, adding Kaden chakra to his body, engulfing it into a sphere of fire before he condensed into smaller and smaller before he outstretched his katana outwards. It did what any other lightning rod does. The Raiden jutsu reacted and shot at the katana, before it started to travel up Ozai's arm. Naruto's eye narrowed when he saw this, knowing this was many of Ozai's talents. Within the sphere, Ozai grit his teeth before using his affinity to lightning and channeled the lighting from his sword to his body and out his other arm, which shot out like a beam. He smiled seeing it work. He still got it. Once Naruto saw the light blue spot coming from the sphere, he chuckled. Old fool still has it. The beam of lightning shot out towards Naruto, who raised his Zanbato, letting it slam right into it. Reacting quickly, he twirled his blade in the air before stabbing it into the ground, letting the lightning disperse within. Then suddenly he whipped out his other hand and let it smack right into the stomach of one Ozai, making the man gasp from the sudden loss of oxygen and pain. Before he too was sent flying into a building. Not letting up, he grabbed his sword, pulled it out of the ground and channeled his energy into his before swinging it at speeds none could match. He shouted, "Saurashireda, Soul Shredder." That's when, similar to Ozai's attack only much fiercer and stronger, did multiple upon countless arcs of purple-yellow streaked arcs shoot out of his swings. Each hit made the building be covered in more smoke as painful grunts could be heard from within. Thinking enough was enough, he stopped in stride and waited. When the smoke cleared up, there on the rumble of wood and metal was Ozai, sitting upon a pile of wood, breathing deeply, with multiple gashes and slices upon his body. Blood dripped from his body and stained his clothing red. His hand resting on his katana, which was stabbed into the ground as his eyes glared into his own golden slitted ones. Glaring back, "Get up, this has only started, fool. And don't hold back," he said as a yellow hue of energy erupted from him as Ozai just sighed before closing his eyes. Only to snap them open to reveal the fully mature Sharingan, the 3 commas spinning rapidly as a scowl etched into his face. Standing up with a small limp, he grasped his katana and forced all of his chakra throughout his body once more, making his body explode into flames once more. Letting the flames go through him, he sighed while relishing in the feeling of the flames covering his body. That is before he glared through his Sharingan eyes at the firm stoned form of Naruto. "Now, let's finish this," he said before igniting his sword once more, while Naruto himself just gathered more energy into Chaos Eater, making it glow purple as yellow streaks of energy cackled around it. His golden slit eyes turned cold and merciless, which soon became the eyes of what he is named for. I couldn't agree more. And with that they jumped towards once more. Once they were mere inches from each other, they both swung down their blades, a loud battle cry. Feasutoraiku, Fire Strike. Sorashemarapu, Soul Reap. Boom. Their second clash made the whole compound itself start to shake uncontrollably. Even Akemi, Kushina and Makoto, who were fighting and defeating the last of the Uchiha, stopped, as did the Uchiha. All before their sights was the giant forming purple sphere that crackled with yellow energy, with flames circling it like a ring, with 3 more of these rings going higher and higher of the whole sphere. The ground broke and shattered. The buildings in the blast radius was blown away, and Uchiha caught in the area were completely incinerated by the intense energies battling each other. Whoa! was the only word that came out of Makoto's mouth while Kushina and Akemi just nodded dumbfounded. Even she, Akemi Abiju, was shocked at the power being displayed. She had no doubt that sphere alone could severely injure her greatly if she was in her beast form. Naru-kun. You'll make it out okay. You always do. After all this is all over, we can all leave this horrible place and live the life we've dreamed for. One from all this blood, death, war. All of it. Were Kushina's inner thoughts as she watched the sphere of death consume all in its path. They watched captivated as the sphere grew in size, even passing the clouds in the sky itself, before Akemi saw something that made her eyes go completely wide. Shit, Kushina, Makoto, get behind me. Noticing her urgent tone, they did so and jumped behind Akemi. Good thing too, for as Akemi completely transformed into her beast form and circled their bodies with her massive tails, ignoring the painful screams from the surrounding Uchiha from her action. She shrouded herself and the other two in a barrier of her yokai. The reason she did this? Simple, the sphere of death started to slowly crack. White cracks appeared in the center as it so. The cracks became even more frequent, and with but a second to spare, and all those that witnessed it, even all the elemental nations itself. The sphere exploded. Boom. And all hell was unleashed in a cataclysmic explosion which rocked the very foundations of Hai no Kuni itself. The sky itself turned pitch black as the land shook and trembled under the massive explosion, the shockwave going all across the nation, hitting, making every single living thing feel its aftershock. None were killed, but they felt something happened when they all felt the same thing, a rush of wind dying down when it reached all the borders of every nation and hitting the ocean itself. Throughout all this, Kushina, Akemi and Makoto all hoped and prayed Naruto was okay. 10 minutes later. 10 minutes had passed since the explosion, and since then Kushina and Makoto were safely protected by Akemi. The barrier she set up was cracked all around but still held up. They were slightly buried under much rubble, but with a slight flick of Akemi's tails did it all burst into the air and fall completely away from them. My head, was the pained drawl from Makoto as she rubbed her aching head. Kushina just blinked her eyes rapidly while getting back her vision from the sudden white light that completely filled her vision from before. Akemi herself was silent through it all. Why? Well, we're about to find out, for when Kushina noticed the silence, she looked at Akemi only for her jaw to drop, as did Makoto's when they saw what Akemi was seeing. Akemi was standing in front of them with a shaky finger pointing in front of her. Her eyes were as wide as humanly, or demonically, possible. In front of her was nothing but pitch black burnt buildings. Rumble from the buildings was completely burnt to a crisp and or turned to ashes. The bodies of the Uchiha were all dead, not a single was alive from the sudden explosion, for they didn't get the protection Kushina and Makoto got. Their bodies burned, making them all completely unrecognizable. But what really was the eye-catcher was the giant crater where the clan head compound used to be, the size being completely unimaginable. Akemi honestly knew it was bigger than her own beast form. "Oh, Kami," Makoto uttered. Kushina snapped out of her stupor before she started running straight to the center of the crater, her eyes filled with fear. Fear of losing the one she loved right when they were so close to leaving the land of death. The fear of losing him forever. Naruto-kun, her voice resounding through the area, and she jumped into the crater. Frantically searching, she never saw Akemi and Makoto landing in the crater as well, worry in their own eyes. They all started to search the massive crater for any sign of Naruto, only for their hope to start slowly dwindling and slowly be filled with horror. It couldn't be that. Naruto died, right? Please, Kami. Please, don't take him away from me. Please, Kami-sama. Please, I beg you. Kushina's praise flowed through the silent wind. Not hearing anything for a while made her slowly start to burst into tears. She pulled her legs up to her chest and sobbed into her knees. Akemi let a tear fall, not able to feel an energy signature anywhere in the vicinity. She slowly approached her former container and hugged her close, whispering soft words to her. Trying to calm her, but to no avail, for even she was crying. Makoto appeared next to her and hugged her as well while screaming at herself for asking Naruto to do this. She never wanted this happen. Naruto-kun. Come back. Please come back. I love you so much, please come back to me. We've only just now come together. Please, please. Her desperate words formed out of her sobs of anguish. Her prayers seemed to be answered in the sound of falling rubble and a grunt of sorts, though they didn't hear of her crying. A hand shot out of the ground before it clenched, and with a slight twitch. Bang! A body rose up from the dirt. It was a different shape than the giant Naruto or clan head Ozai. But when the golden hair showed, it was a dead giveaway. When the man fully rose up from the ground, he bent his neck and rolled it a few times, popping the creaks and such out. He then dusted off his shoulder and clothes before shooting his hand once more into the dirt and pulled out Chaos Eater. Only it now being smaller like the man was. When Naruto looked himself over, he frowned and shook his head. Man didn't expect the seal to go off like that during the clash. Those energies must have disrupted the seal. Guess I'm like this, huh? Oh well, that's when Naruto's ears perked up when he heard the sounds of crying. When he heard the voice of the one crying though, he froze. Kushina-chan. Looking around the area, he searched frantically until his eyes landed upon the three forms of Akemi. Makoto with Kushina surrounded in their arms, crying into her knees. Using his speed, he quickly approached them, needing to help quell Kushina and see if she was okay. Why? Naruto-kun. Why did you die? Her words made him frown, and coming up from behind them, he let his shadow slowly come over all of them. Slowly, ever so slowly, he crouched down idly, noting his height was back to a normal 6 feet 5. Looking up at Kushina, Akemi and Makoto, he sighed before speaking. Now Kushi-hime. Why would think I'm dead? His words seemed to struck a chord when all three of them froze on the spot. Slowly but assuredly they all turned their heads into his direction. Their eyes all widened, more so Kushina's. Her violet eyes gleamed and glistened from her fallen tears. Fear and terror slowly dissipating and replaced with hope and happiness. Reaching out with her quavering voice alone, Kushina spoke in all but a whisper, but was so filled with hope that if told wrong would break her spirit altogether. Of course it is, Hime. Did you really think that could kill me? Seriously now? He said, but all he got was a red missile slamming into him, knocking him to the ground. A wet pair of lips smashing into his own. He could see it was Kushina's lip. Her eyes were closed as tears fell from her face. Her arms were wrapped around his neck and grasping his shoulders so tight that he could tell she didn't want to let go anytime soon. But soon his instincts followed, and soon him and Kushina were engaged in a hot, passionate kiss filled with as much love they had for each other. His arms circled her body and lifted her up before circling her legs around his waist. He kept their kiss in pace while doing so, while slowly stroking her red hair. Their tongues lashed out at each other, tasting each other before going back at it. Slowly but assuredly Kushina started to slightly moan in the kiss, where he started to stroke her back. Reluctantly they broke apart before Kushina leaned against his muscled chest and sighed happily, her face flushed from their first true kiss. Her eyes were filled with love for the man she was embraced with. Soon enough, though, she was asleep against his chest, snoring lightly. Seeing this, Naruto chuckled quietly before looking back at the girls. Only to see to his secret amusement both of them passed out, with nosebleeds, with cherry red faces. Hey, and they call men perverts? Ha ha ha. Seeing the predicament though, he slowly, ever so slowly, made 3 smokeless cage bushins, having to pick up Akemi and Makoto, while he substituted with the last without smoke as to not wake his sleeping Hime. After doing so, he looked at his 3 clones and spoke. Okay, you 3, you know where to go. I'll meet you at the village in Nami no Kuni. Get them in their beds. They'll need to sleep for what is to come tomorrow, he said with his eyes on all 3 of them. The cage bushins nodded before 2 of the 3 jumped away, leaving the one carrying Kushina its creator. And you, boss? Naruto just gave him a stare before speaking. I'm gonna do what I said I would. And that is the complete annihilation of the Uchiha clan. The clone nodded, knowing the underlying message. Seeing this, Naruto nodded before walking up to Kushina. Seeing her sleeping peaceful face, he let out a small sigh before leaning down and kissing her on the cheek. Don't worry, Kushi-hime. Yours, and my dream, will become a reality. And I'll fight through the 9 circle of hell and back 100x before I fail that promise. With that he looked back at the clone. Go. Seeing this, the clone disappeared in a burst of speed. Knowing it was gone, Naruto strapped Chaos Eater to his back, channeling chakra to make it stick. He soon jumped out of the crater and landed right on the very end of where the main gate of the Uchiha clan used to be. Seeing the crater was still within the Uchiha area made him sigh in relief. Good, then I can do this all in one go. And before taking a deep breath, he stretched out his hands before he narrowed his eyes. He suddenly gripped the air, making it look like he was holding onto a wall of plastic. Now, let the history and all clues of this wretched clan be gone. So with a mighty heave he pulled both his arms downward, knowing what he was doing was nothing compared to other things he has done. He slowly but assuredly smiled when he felt the ground shake and tremble before it suddenly started to shift. He watched impassively as the whole Uchiha district, compound and surrounding forest all suddenly rose up into the air. He smirked cruelly when he saw his work about to be completed. The world will never know the dark history that was the Uchiha clan. He eyes the clan as the slab of land he usually creates was now on a monumental scale of size. It was high in the sky before it slowly started to lean to the left and slowly fall. He grinned as he watched it go down before he swiftly turned around and chuckled. Boom! He felt the wind blow past him from the crash of the land slab slamming into the ground, possibly the shockwave reaching the Fire Country Palace itself. Through it all he just smirked before raised his index finger at the Uchiha main gate. Almost forgot about you, he said before pointing his finger down, making the gates shift as well before they too suffered the same fate of being crushed by the earth itself. Seeing his job done, Naruto sighed before grinning. Well, time to go, and finally be free of the chains that bind us to this land. With that, Naruto's form disappeared, leaving nothing behind. No blood, no dead bodies of countless Uchiha, no shredded buildings or the crater the size of Kyubi. Only a slab of earth looking normal as ever, which could possibly be the new land for some rich merchant or farmer. If only those people knew what lay underneath. 2 hours later, Nami no Kuni village. Upon arriving in the small village in Mai no Kuni, Naruto had come upon a hotel where he knew his clones took the girls into. Walking inside, he lets out a sigh as he looks himself over once more. It would seem his body went down with a major overhaul from the giant size of 25 feet tall to his normal height of 6 feet 5, with that still unusual height for most people. His giant muscles were now compacted and lean as his body was now more of a body built for great power and speed. He eyed warily his hand before clenching them as his eyes narrowed. Chaos Eater upon his back was as well smaller in length of being 6 feet 0 in length and 3 feet in width. Didn't expect this to happen. Guess the seal was destroyed when it was exposed to those energies. Guess I'll need to make a new one, he idly noted. That's when he came upon the door number 248. Pulling out a key from his not much ruined baggy pants, he entered it into the lock, and upon twisting it open did he slowly open the door. Only to see Makoto asleep on the couch in the living room, covered up with a small pillow under her head. He eyed her form warily before shaking his head. She proved herself back there, so there was no reason for him to still be suspicious of her. Well, not as much as before. He slowly walked past the kitchen and over to Makoto. Looking down at her, he sighed before pulling the cover that was touching the floor and covered up her feet and her shoulders before adjusting her pillow a bit, but quietly as to not wake her up. After this he stood up and left, not seeing the soft, gentle smile grace Makoto's face and her small murmur. If he did hear it, he would have been frozen on the spot. Naruto-kun. Walking through the hallway, he comes upon the master bedroom, and opens it only to see something that made him let loose a smile. A heartfelt one at that, for the scene before him was truly something he has been dreaming to see for so long now. That being, Kushina, his highness, asleep upon the king-size bed, the sheets covering her figure and over her shoulders. Her pale skin almost glowing in the moonlight, and her maroon long hair sprawled out all on the bed and her body giving her a regal look. He idly noted the little fox kit asleep in her arms, meaning it was Akemi. Letting out a small sigh, he slowly unhooked Chaos Eater from his back and leaned it against the wall before removing his boots and shirt. After doing so, he slowly crept onto the other side of the bed and covered himself up in the sheets. Slowly he scooted closer to Kushina before he slowly wrapped his arms around her frame. Ever so slowly he pulled her to him before she was facing him, her face to his own, her body pressed against his own. He smiled at her sleeping face before giving a kiss to her forehead before letting out a sigh. Good night, Kushihime. Starting tomorrow, we all start our new lives. No longer separated, but together. His words seemed to be heard as a smile spread across her face. Placing a hand on her cheek, he let his eyes drift off into the dream world, knowing he was together with the one he loved the most and cherished beyond everything in the world. Next morning, narrator's room. Once the yellow blazing sun reached the early morn, Its radiant light reached through the window and bathed on the couple in the bed together. It shining on them like a blessing of light that warmed them even more. Once its light reached Kushina's face, her eyes twitched a bit before they opened slightly before closing them from the light of the sun. Letting out a low grumble or two, she blinked the light away and got her vision to normal. Once she did, Kushina looked down in her arms to see her fiend Akemi sleeping away in her kid form. Smiling faintly, she sighed before her eyes widened when she felt another pair of arms wrapped around her body. From the feel of the hard as steel muscled arms wrapped around her fame and the 8-pack abs and full-out muscled chest, she blushed, having a feeling of exactly whose arms she was in. Slowly looking up, she had to stifle a gasp. Naruto-kun. Her words filled with so much relief but surprise as hell, since she was seeing the face of the one she loved a bit changed now. His body now all smaller than it usually was. His arms slender yet firm, compacted of extreme muscle mass. His ripped cut chest and abs in full view if her own body was pressed against it. Looking up at him, she smiled before placing a hand on his cheek. Leaning forward, she gave him a kiss, making the man open his eyes slowly to see her. After a second, he closed them once more before surprising Kushina when he leaned into the kiss and pulled her further to his body. That is before she started to moan in the kiss when his hands started to roam her back and stroke her hair. Naruto-kun. Her moan getting longer at his ministrations. Soon enough he pulled her closer to him where their faces were inches from each other before he placed his hand atop hers after separating from the kiss. Kushina sighed lovingly before leaning against his chest, while rubbing one of his hands across his rippled chest. And what a wake-up call. His words made her blush a bit before grinning. Looking up, she gave him a mischievous look. You'll get more if you be a good boy. He gave a chuckle at that, which made her blush since his chest just vibrated like a small tremor, giving her a small shock of pleasure down her body. Looking down at her, he gave a toothy grin that threatened to split his face. Hey, sorry, being a good boy isn't my forte, but being a bad boy, I have in spades, Tilda. His words made her blush a deep bloody scarlet, especially when his hand pinched her butt. Her face grew even redder before she gave an absolutely adorable squeak. Hearing this, he smiled before giving her a kiss on the lips, which she returned with fervor. Her tongue asking for entrance, which he obliged before she probed his mouth, tasting him. Her tongue touched his own before they entered a battle of dominance, which she soon lost. He explored her own mouth, tasting to his amusement ramen of all things. After separating for air, Kushina let out another sigh as her flushed face shone in the light of the sun, giving her an almost divine look. Her violet eyes glowed with love and fulfillment of being with him and him alone. Giving her a smile, he spoke, Kushihime. You know, as much as I practically love being with you in bed and would want to all day, we all need to get up. It's time we all left. This earned her attention immediately. Leave? Where will we be going, Naruto-kun? Said man just gave her a smile. Before throwing his clothes back on before strapping Chaos Eater to his back. After doing so, he looked back at Kushina, seeing her climbing out of her bed, and has to suppress a nosebleed when he saw her goddess-like body hidden only by the sheets of the bed. Kushina saw this and blushed a bit before she did something that did make him have a nosebleed. She tried to hide her body, placing her arm over her breasts and cross her legs while blushing cutely. Her violet eyes looked ever so nervous yet embarrassed when she saw him eyeing her body. He quickly wiped the nosebleed away and walked out, hiding his growing blush. While the image of what she just did was burned within his mind and would never leave it. Ever. When she was sure, he left her face lit up like a Christmas tree before she placed her hands on her cheeks and actually let out a small squeal. Damn, Kushi-chan, you are quite the unintentional flirt, aren't you? The teasing voice surprised her, making her look at the bed to see the vulpine grin of Akemi back in her human form, wearing the same of what she wore yesterday. Kushina just sputtered out a response as Akemi just let out a chuckle. With Naruto, we could find him walking out the hallway and into the living room to wake Makoto, only to see her, to his slight surprise, already up and ready. She wore the same as yesterday, but now her eyes showed how eager she was to be getting away from the accursed land for which she has lived in. Giving her a nod, which she slowly returned, giving him a big smile, he just walked past her before saying, Makoto. Have Kushina-chan and Akemi as well. And yourself meet me at the docks. We leave when you're all ready. Seeing her confused nod, he kept walking till he opened and closed the door behind him. After she left, Makoto looked at the ground and let out a small smile. She remembered even if he didn't know of what he did last night, and honestly was shocked at what he done. She thought he hated her, but after making sure she was okay and warm, she couldn't be happier of the choice she made of coming with Kushina. 1 hour later, docks. So any idea what Naruto's planning here at the docks? Akemi asked as she rested up Kushina's head in her fox form. She got a negative from both women. They had already left the hotel after hearing Naruto paid for the night and all. So once they left, they headed out to the docks, all wondering of what he was doing, but Kushina already had a suspicion but needed to see it to make sure. "Oi!" The shout made them all perk up before casting their gazes up to see to their surprise Naruto standing before them, Chaos Eater upon his back. But what they saw what he was standing on is what got most of their attention, or Kushina's case. "Oh my Kami, you got a caravel." Her eyes was wide as possible with a shine in them that just radiated excitement. Akemi just snickered at this while Makoto just giggled. Naruto himself chuckled before speaking, "That I did. But let's hurry up, I want to set sail before the sun fully rises." Hearing this, they nodded before jumping up onto the boat. As their feet touched the hard wood floor, they set out to explore their new vessel and memorized every inch of it. While Naruto himself untied the rope and let loose the sails. He then set out a few cage bushings to start manning the ship while he went to steer, while also waiting on the girls. It didn't take long when they rushed out onto the deck when they felt the boat start to rock and move. Looking down at them, he spoke, "Girls up here." Hearing him, Kushina jumped beside him and spoke. "Naruto-kun. I know we were gonna use a boat and all, but how will we man such a vessel with only ourselves?" He just stared at her before chuckling before patting her head and ruffling her hair, making her pout cutely. He then pointed down at the sails, which she followed his direction. "Why cage bushings, of course." She just blinked before smacking her forehead and sighing. Of course, only Naruto would use such an ingenious idea for such a productive chore. Looking back at the amused Naruto, she spoke, "I see." He just smiled before wrapping his arm around her shoulder before he planted a kiss on her cheek. Looking up with a slight blush, Kushina just smiled before leaning against him. Looking down at her, he smiled before looking out at the vast ocean. He inhaled the deep sea breeze as the wind blew his hair. This is just a taste of what he and Kushina dreamed of. A life full of freedom. The chains and shackles that binded them to their bloody past were all but destroyed now, and now were on their way to fulfilling their dream. He looked at Akemi and Makoto. "I never expected though to be taking 2 more women along. Oh well. Things will get interesting, that's for sure." He was cut out of his musings though when suddenly, boom, Uzumaki d Naruto. "Stop right there and face judgment," was the yell that got his attention. Looking over his shoulder as the explosion of water erupted from the starboard side of the ship. Possibly a cannonball, he saw to his utter hate and wrath. A full-out armada of Iwagakure Navy ships, with the leading one having the Admiral of Iwagakure on the front side of the ship. "Damn. They're persistent. They even brought out their ships," Naruto uttered as both Makoto and Kushina gawked at the sight of those countless ships. How does a shinobi village even have ships? And one from Tsuchi no Kuni of all places? Makoto said as more cannonballs sailed past their ships, seemingly just to scare them. Naruto himself just twitched every so often. I'd say they had another branch of their village out at the ocean border and made a docking village for their own use. Maybe these for when they attacked Kirigakure, maybe. Akemi spoke as she eyed each and every ship behind them. "What I want to know is how they knew we would be here. Did one of their spies recognize us?" Kushina said, clenching her hand upon the wooden railing while practically glaring at the one thing that was keeping them all from leaving the elemental nations forever. Naruto just walked beside Kushina with his eyes shadowed by his bangs. His fists were clenched so tight blood leaked from both hands, as veins popped out of his arms. The trembling of his arms showed how close he was to his breaking point. Kushina saw him and was about to ask if he was okay. Only to be too late when he reared back his head and practically roared. "You Kami forsaken bastards, I warned you to leave me alone. But no, your foolish, ignorant, pathetic Tsuchikage is too damn adamant to have my head. Well, guess what? You won't be leaving here alive, any of you." His words echoing across the open sea and making the shinobi upon the Iwa ships tremble. Looking at the girls to his right, they saw his golden slit eyes now glowing a fiery gold. "Kushina, Makoto hold on and Akemi hold the wheel. Things are about to get very destructive." Hearing this, Akemi's eyes widened before she jumped to the wheel as Kushina and Makoto latched onto the railing. Seeing this, he reared his gaze back at the armada and raised both his arms. "You fools chased me. And you shall pay the price. This event shall be remembered as our leaving of the elemental nations. All shall bear witness to your death. Say hell to Shinigami-sama for me." He then without warning clenched his fist and crouched with his arms across his chest. Then without a second later he reared them back. Only for both of his fists hit the air, making cracks appear, and without a moment to waste a sudden shockwave erupted from him and right into the ocean itself. The Iwagakure would forever burn it into their minds of Naruto's golden fiery slitted orbs glaring down on all of them as the ocean floor that floated upon their entire armada of fully packed ships of Iwagakure shinobi were all but swallowed and crushed by monumental tidal waves that rose up from both of their sides. They reached past the sky itself and came crashing down onto them as a giant whirlpool appeared under them. Their screams of horror and anguish rang loud and true. The sounds of boats being crushed and swirling water sounded the area. The three women watched in utter shock and amazement at the sight they just beheld. Even as the aftershocks of the event rocked the boat, they couldn't speak a word at what they just witnessed. An entire armada of ships completely and utterly destroyed. By the very waters they sailed upon, it was ironic really. The very sea itself they swore to sail acted in total betrayal and crushed them beneath their endless pressure of water. Seeing them gone, Naruto let his hands loose before turning around only to see the three girls gawking at him like he was some sort of god. He blinked before chuckling. "You gonna just keep staring at me like that?" he said, amused really at how they were acting. Sure, he too was shocked at what his powers could do in water, but soon got over it and acted normal a few days later. Even if he did accidentally swallow a whole mountain with a wave of water. It was an accident of course and a result of him practicing his power on open water. Upon reaching the wheel, he gave Akemi a grateful nod before letting out a sigh. "We'll let our new life begin. Hope you girls are ready." He soon got his answer when suddenly, "Naruto-kun, that was so cool." Kushina's shout erupted before her form was on his back, her arms wrapped around his neck with an excited grin upon her face. Makoto just gave a grin herself after witnessing what she just saw. She was totally assured now going with Naruto was the best possible choice she ever made. It was sure to be adventurous, especially with him around. Akemi was beside Naruto in a second, her eyes practically shining like two pair of stars. "You have got to teach me that," was her reply before she shifted into her kid form and sat upon his head, nuzzling into his golden black streaked hair. Naruto just let out a sigh while he steered the ship onward away from the elemental nations, never looking back at the land that has caused him and Kushina so much pain. He would never look back at the land he would rather tear asunder, but would now just live a new life with the ones around him and the one he loves so much. Though he would soon find out Kushina wasn't the only girl to gain his love during this new life. It's been 2 weeks since Naruto and the girls left the elemental nations and set sail for their new life on the open seas. Ever since then the group of 4 have been enjoying their voyage, because since they were first out of sight of the elemental nations did each and every single person feel a great weight lifted off their shoulders. The burden of just being in that cursed land and its nightmares that came with it were finally free from them, yet even then they couldn't forget their past lives. Over the last 2 weeks, the crew of 4 have kept themselves busy. Even despite the calming sounds of the clear blue seas, they always kept themselves in tip-top form. For each one knew, even for Akemi Abiju, you are to never let your guard down even in times of peace. That was why, the 4 trained in slight warm-up exercises to keep themselves up and better themselves while not damaging the boat they stood upon. Though some interesting things have happened with just the first week alone. For just on their second day during their voyage they encountered something in the skies which had the unfortunate luck of being hit by one of Makoto's Raiden jutsus, to which it had fallen upon the deck cooked to a crisp. Though what was strange about the bird was that it strangely enough had some kind of hat on its head with the word Nusuku, Nusku, stitched in. That wasn't the only thing, for the bird was oddly enough carrying a sack of what looked to be papers of sort. Now normally such things were a waste of both time and not even worth looking into, but being former shinobi and a biju of millenniums of knowledge, all knew everything was resourceful. And they were all proven correct. When the 4 searched them they found out they were newspapers, with slips of paper with specific individuals' faces with the words, "Bounty," on them. That wasn't the only thing though, because to Naruto's amusement did they find a map. A map of all things, yet this map was one that was both strange yet helped all of them realize just how much there is than the elemental nations. For the map showed many things that made all four of their eyes widen in pure shock. Because compared to the lands they were seeing now, the elemental nations itself was nothing but a speck of dirt compared to what they saw on the map. Of course most of them didn't know what to do with it, but, to Naruto's slight surprise, Makoto did take more interest in the map than all four of them. It was like she was born to read maps and decipher them and make new ones. Kushina had said she was one of the greatest minds she has ever seen for both in fighting and reading maps of enemy bases. But, there was more to it than that. Makoto had actually stayed in her room working constantly at night drawing out the map, its islands, and the name of each sea and the giant line of landmass as well. It took a while, but Makoto had come out and explained to them all what she was able to find out. Flashback. So, you've found out about what type of lands and seas are then? Questioned Naruto. His eyes now roaming over the new map Makoto had drawn out from the other one, only this time the words were clearer and having the name of each sea named out, yet the islands were still unnamed, for it was pretty obvious. They had yet to see another island. Still, it's remarkably done. So good it beats every other navigator's map I've seen hands down. Said woman nodded as she sat upon a chair, a small smile on her face as she grabbed her tools and started to explain, while both Kushina and Akemi looked over her shoulder with curious eyes as well. Taking a deep breath, Makoto explained while pushing up her glasses bit. That was another thing, it would seem Makoto needed her glasses when she worked on the maps. Yes, I have, or most of them, because I don't know if I'm entirely sure if they're correct or not, because the language is similar to our own, but, at the same time, not all the same. The lands and all are the same from the other map. It's just the names that signify which sea is what and what that giant red line of land is. I was able to decipher what I could though, so let me point out what we have here. Seeing the nod from Naruto, she continued. From what I was able to see, we have the sea itself, which is called Barushi, the Blue Sea, which itself is split up into 4 parts to which they have their own names. They are as followed: Kita no Umi, North Blue, which is the northern part of the map right here, she pointed out, to which she gained a nod from him. Seeing this, she continued, the second one is called Minami no Umi, South Blue, which is the southern part of the map. The third one is called Nishi no Umi, West Blue. This is on the western part of the map, and the last one is called Higashi no Umi, East Blue. Those are the 4 seas from what I could decipher, she explained before she looked up to see Naruto nodding. I see, then what are these lines right here and that giant red landmass? To which Makoto scratched her head a bit in embarrassment. Ah, that, I forgot to explain. Well, that giant red landmass is called the Akai Suchi no Tairiku, the red line. From what I could tell, it's a line that separates the 4 seas, thus making all but one way to get to the other. That being this, she said, pointing in the center of the red line, to show 4 lines intersecting with each other as they all 4 connected to the 4 seas. Then she pointed her finger on the last line before skimming it down the red line and onto a specific line. That was what the map called the Rivasu Mountain, Reverse Mountain, to where the line here leads onto this line, which is called the Idai Naru Koro, the Grand Line. I don't know why it's called this, but that is what it's called and where it is. She finished explaining, to which Naruto nodded. That is before Kushina saw something before pointing it out. Anyo, Miko-chan, what's that right there? She said, pointing at the green lines outlining the Grand Line and touching the 4 seas. Seeing this, Makoto gave a small smile before explaining. Ah yes. Well, that was what I could decipher, called the Kamu Baruto, the Calm Belt, though I have no idea why it's called that. Kushina blinked before nodding at this. Naruto, seeing the map once more after reviewing everything Makoto told him in his mind and storing it away, spoke. I see. And do you know where we are exactly? This made Makoto frown as she looked at the map once more in confusement. She idly twirled a pencil between her fingers before letting out a sigh. I'm sorry, Naruto-san, but, without getting to another island, I don't know exactly where we are. I'm sorry, she said, slightly disappointed in herself, to which Kushina gently grasped her shoulder. Akemi just smiled softly while she glanced toward Naruto to see to her surprise, smiling. She watched when he slowly placed a hand on Makoto's shoulder, making her freeze, but his next words made her drop her pencil in complete shock. That is of no worry, Makoto-san. You have done more than I could have asked of you, for not only did you make a new map out of the first but translated it for us. That will greatly help us all in the future. And since you've done such an excellent job, I want you, Uchiha Makoto, to be our cruise navigator." With a small smile as he mentally chuckled, seeing the shocked expressions of all the girls as the sound of a pencil clattering and rolling on the wooden floor sounded the room. Makoto couldn't believe what she just heard. Naruto wanted her to be the cruise navigator. He trusted her enough for such an important task? A task that keeps the person responsible for keeping the ship on its trajectory and on course? She couldn't hardly believe it, yet the words still rang true within the very depths of her mind. Slowly looking up, she saw the golden eyes of Naruto looking down on her, staring now into her onyx ones, but what truly shattered her right there was the approval in his eyes, to which she just couldn't hold herself back. Unshedded tears swelled up in her eyes while her hands trembled as her lips just quivered until it became too much for her. Which resulted in her speaking. I won't fail you, Naruto-san. I will be the best navigator you will ever see. That I promise you with my very soul," she said with such conviction it slightly surprised both Akemi and Kushina. Naruto, though, just nodded his head before he patted Makoto's shoulder before walking toward the door. "Then I expect nothing less from you then, Makoto-san. But do not tire yourself out. That would be hazardous to your health. Which is something I don't want." With that he closed the door, leaving behind 3 shocked women. Well, that is before his words fully effected them, which got reactions out of all of them. That being, Akemi gaining a giant vulpine teasing grin before she started speaking. "Wow, Makoto-chan. Seems Naruto-kun is starting to hold you in higher regard now, if those words are anything to go by," she said with a giggle. Makoto just flushed a great beet red, which Kushina caught while Akemi was too busy chuckling to herself to notice. Leaning down, Kushina spoke. "Miko-chan. Why are you blushing?" she said with a grin of all things. Makoto just blushed greater, to which Kushina noticed, making her grin go wider before she leaned down to her ear and spoke. "Is it because that Naru-kun's trusting you with such a task? Or is it because of something else? I wonder," teasing clear as the bright blue sky in her tone. Makoto shivered at her words, not wanting to meet her gaze, as her face just answered Kushina's question right there. It glowed even brighter, to the point it matched Kushina's maroon blood-red hair. Kushina's grin turned into a smile which had no teasing, and not a shred of her usual mischief. Instead there was content yet happiness in her smile, that which surprised Makoto on the inside. Though she couldn't hold it back any longer when Kushina spoke her next words. "I see. You like Naru-kun as well, nay? Well, I don't mind sharing. But with only Akemi-chan. And you, Miko-chan. Anyone else, and I would have killed them already. So do your best to gain his love. Because you have my blessing." With that, Makoto couldn't hold herself back before her nose gained a nosebleed before her eyes rolled to the back of her head as she passed out on her desk. Kushina smiled. Flashback end. Ever since then, Makoto has kept her word, and not knowing it impressed Naruto each day with her work. At night she would continue to analyze the map over and over, looking over every single detail, major or minor, she didn't care. Makoto wanted to prove herself, and she did day after day, not only improving her already amazing skill in navigating but the detail of where they were exactly. For her to do this, Makoto has been outside looking around on the bird's nest, as sailors call it, before writing down what she could get before rushing to her room. This worried both Kushina and Akemi, but Naruto assured them both if she got too chaotic he would have a talk with her. Thankfully enough, though, she did slow down a bit on the 4th day of their voyage, but that was because of something else entirely. It got their attention. She was slowing down more than usual and was starting to get a bit more moody, you could say. It got to the point where Akemi was sensing something odd from Makoto until it fully got her attention, which was the 5th day of their voyage. Flashback. Walking down the hallway towards the captain's quarters was Akemi, a serious expression on her normal easygoing and somewhat teasing face. It's been a total of 5 days since their voyage, and since then Akemi has never been happier, but when Makoto started acting strangely she started looking into her jeans with her demonic smell. For a while she was only smelling humanity, anxiety, happiness and other such things, but one thing did catch her attention and she needed to talk with Naruto about it right now. Coming up to his door, Akemi took a breath before. Knock, knock, come in. Hearing this, Akemi opened the door to see Naruto sitting at his desk reading over what appeared to be another map of Makoto's. His facial expression etched with concentration as his eyes roamed over the map with extreme intensity. It made Akemi ever so slightly shiver. Not out of fear, or some foolish notion such as that. But it was out of excitement. Shaking the chills out of her, Akemi walked forward and spoke, "Naruto-kun. We need to talk." Now, hearing her words, he looked up to see her serious expression, thus seeing it. He put down the map, the intensity in his eyes completely gone now, yet the coldness of which he always had still lingered. "Yes, what is it, Akemi-chan?" Ever since the voyage, his relationship between himself and Akemi was somewhat strange, since Naruto knew the Biju before him, has known about him as long as Kushina has. She has been there alongside Kushina throughout her and his lives and has seen him for what he is. She, like Kushina, knows the deeds he's done. Everything about him does Akemi know through Kushina, so he only seemed it fair for him to be friendly around Akemi. Though that didn't mean Akemi wasn't just friendly around him. "Well, it's about Makoto-chan. You see, for a while now we've all been sensing something wrong of her as of late, correct?" To which he nodded. He's seen her slow change and he could see something was wrong with her, to which he has questioned her about it, but she had told him not to worry, but it did the exact opposite and it made him worry. He didn't really know why he was worrying over her, but for some reason in just a week Makoto had already washed away most of his suspicion of her with how much she worked and how dedicated she was to what she was great at. Truly, he couldn't find a reason for it, but he knew one thing, and that was he would do anything to help Makoto, since she wasn't only Kushina's best friend but also Uchiha Makoto was his nakama, comrade. That was more than enough of a reason for him. "Well, for the past day or so I've been sniffing out her scent to see if I could find anything wrong with her, and it seems she is pretty normal overall." But when Naruto heard his eyes narrowed when he saw Akemi's troubled expression. "Yes." The Kitsune Biju let out a sigh before looking him in the eye and spoke. "Well, it would seem over all the feelings she has is one she is trying to cover up, and that's some kind of pain. Lately not only her scent showed an underlining tint of pain, but her body has started to show signs of physical pain, not on the outside but on the inside, and due to my perceptive vision I can tell you right now. Something is going on with Makoto-chan and her body. And I know what it is." This made Naruto perk up at her words. "Oh, what is it then?" Akemi this time took it upon herself to take a seat on Naruto's bed before speaking. Only this time Naruto idly noted her crimson-slitted eyes were now dead serious, with a glow in her eyes that showed how important her next words were gonna be. "Well, it would seem, Makoto-chan isn't technically human." Once Naruto heard those words, his eyes as well gained a serious glint before he stood up, completely shadowing over Akemi's form by a good few inches. His face set in a stone-firm expression as he eyed Akemi for any kind of deception from her words. Once he saw none, he let out a sigh before speaking. "I see. Then please elaborate as to what she really is." "From what I've seen, she's as human as can be." This made the Biju shake her head. "That's the thing, you see, Makoto-chan doesn't know it either, but from what I can tell, deep within her I smelled a very familiar scent, which was that of another demon that was from Makai. This demon had the ability to mask its scent in which way it wanted, so it couldn't or didn't want to be found. The only ones that could smell them was me and my clan, the Kitsunes, but the demon race themselves though were quite powerful, rivaling Biju actually. How Makoto has their blood is probably from one of the demons mating with Makoto's ancestor, and the blood of the demon watered down through the centuries till it couldn't be awakened." Naruto nodded at her explanation. "I see. Then what is she then, and is it possible to awaken her demonic blood?" This got a surprised reaction from Akemi, but she nodded either way. "Well, for one, she is what Makai has called for eons the Yami no Gurka Ukami, the darkness hellfire wolf. They're a wolf that specialize in the Makai elements of both darkness and hellfire, which are both extremely powerful enough to injure Biju. They are very powerful and are to be taken when sighted with the utmost of extreme caution, yet I'm kinda surprised Miko-chan is one of them as well. Anyway, onto your second question. To awaken Makoto's blood, that is if she wants to. I would be able to awaken her blood fully and completely by using one of my demonic techniques, but in doing so there would be one drawback." This made Naruto raise an eyebrow in curiosity. "That being?" Akemi took a breath before frowning. "Makoto will no longer be human. She would be a full demon, but she would still be able to use her Sharingan, Copy Wheel Eye, due to the bloodline being demonic in nature, as is most other bloodlines. Her overall skills would skyrocket like her physical strength, speed, reflexes, durability, stamina, and both her sight and smell would improve to demonic levels, having them able to see farther sights than any human and some demons could possibly see, and sense of smell would grow, making her able to smell any scent no matter what it is and how far it is. That particular scent is what most of her kind favors in though. Lastly, like myself, Makoto would become immortal where she can't and won't die by young age and won't grow old. She will stop aging at 21 and she will gain a regenerative healing to where she can regenerate a lost limb, but that would take some time getting used to. This got a nod from Naruto as he ushered her to continue. And next she would have a demon form like myself when I'm in my beast form, or a hybrid form with only showing some of her animalistic features like her tails and ears. Other than that, not much else. Though I do need to ask. Why are you interested in awakening her blood? She with a curious tone. Naruto, listening through her explanation, nodded through it all as he thought about Makoto's reaction when she hears of this. It made him smirk a bit when she does hear about it, as he already knows Kushina's reaction to it, that being she'd probably glomp Makoto while grinning cheerily through it all. Honestly, it was an amusing thought. Shaking his head, he looked back at Kemi, remembering her question, to which he replied, "Isn't it obvious? Well, from what you told me, this is starting to hurt her and I can't have that. Makoto-san is our crew member and I'll be damned before she is hurt because of something as trivial as this. That is why, Akemi, I want her demonic blood awakened before it totally consumes her and harms to beyond all type of healing. And I can't have that. For one, she's Kushina-chan's friend and by extension yourself, so I don't want her dead." Hearing this, Akemi let loose a grin so big Naruto wondered if it would split her face. That's when she acted. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," she yelled, to which she lost her composure and actually pounced on Naruto, making fall back from his chair and onto the floor. He let out a painful grunt, before he looked down to see the vulpine grinning Akemi, her now animalistic features showing her 2 fluffy red fox ears and 9 flowing tails, all twitching in excitement. Naruto gained a twitch in his eyebrow before he cast his gaze down onto Akemi before he spoke, "Oi, get off me." But she didn't listen. Instead, she, to his surprise, snuggled closer, while to his ever-growing surprise did Akemi let out a purr of both clear mischief and seduction that only a kitsune of Akemi's caliber could ever display, her mouth set in a smirk so vulpine it made the Z-ranked shinobi sweat a bit. He idly watched when her hands slowly rubbed and groped his muscles from his chest to his abs. His eyes widened slightly when he felt Akemi's hands go lower as her smirk widened even more. Akemi was also a major tease, especially around him. Reacting quickly, he grasped her hands firmly, yet not enough to snap her wrists like he's done to many others before, speaking. "Akemi-chan. Get off me now or no sleeping with Kushihime and me for the next month." Hearing this made Akemi's crimson-slitted gems widen comically in fear before completely jumped off Naruto, making him mentally smirk. Looking at her, Naruto spoke once more, this time all amusement gone and replaced with the stone-cold serious golden eyes of which he was known for. "Now, Akemi, enough fooling around. I want you to get both Kushina and Makoto, have them all meet me in here, including yourself. I want her blood awakened before this pain of her goes any further." Hearing both no questions asked tone and seeing his golden orbs staring her down without a hint of hesitation of what he was telling her, it just showed her how much this one man proved to be the greatest, no, the ultimate alpha. He showed no fear before her because he and she both knew he had the power to match her own both physically and mentally. Yet somehow, I feel, there's so much more to him. Why is that? "Akemi-chan. Did you hear me?" His voice shook the kitsune from her thoughts, remembering his words quickly. Akemi nodded before leaving the room with a sway of her hips and a suggestive wink from her before she left through the door. Through it all, Naruto just let out a sigh of both annoyance and ever so slight amusement. That woman will be the death me. Flashback end. And on that same day, did Akemi round up both Kushina and Makoto before taking them to Naruto's quarters, saying it was an important announcement. It confused them, but when they reached his quarters, where they met with a serious Naruto standing before them with his eyes staring straight at Makoto. It honestly made the woman fidget with his golden eyes on her, staring straight at her. It was like his eyes stared straight into her very soul, searching for something. He told them that Akemi had told him of something about Makoto that needs to be said and said now, to which confused both Kushina and Makoto especially, but Akemi spoke either way. explaining of what she was able to find out about Makoto and her hidden genes. And also to Makoto's shock, the reason behind her inner pain from within her body. It was explained to Makoto's growing shock and Kushina's surprise, that her demonic blood was forcing itself out due to Akemi's yukai always being near Makoto, thus sparking up the yukai blood within her. After hearing everything, Kushina did exactly what Naruto thought she would do. Flashback. Sugoi. That's so cool, so Makoto-chan's like Akemi-chan. That is so amazing. Databane, shouted the obviously excited Kushina. Her mouth formed into a grin so big it looked ready to split her angelical face. And like Naruto had anticipated, she was hugging the shocked Makoto, who was turning blue. Kushi-chan. Let go of Makoto-san. She's turning blue, no, now purple, said Uzumaki, blinked dumbly before looking back at Makoto, only for her eyes to widen comically before quickly letting go of Makoto, who at that moment fell on the floor greedily gasping for the oh so precious oxygen. She loved Kushina, yes, but the woman had the strength of a titan when she was excited. Hehehe, Gomen Miko-chan, guess I got a bit too excited, Ibane tilde, she said with a sheepish grin, to which Makoto just smiled. Watch this. Naruto was watching with amusement clear in his usual impassive eyes. Truly it was an amusing sight even in such a situation. Kushina was always able to lift up the tense atmosphere that invaded them. No matter how small or big, Kushina always had that ability to lift the spirits of those that were around here. That's one he loves about Kushina and a reason of how he fell for her in the first place. Though when she's pissed or angry, even he wouldn't get in her way. Akemi through it all was smiling. She always found her campaigner's attitude adorable since it reminded her much of a newborn kid's attitude. Though the two went back to normal afterwards after seeing the serious atmosphere returning once more and stronger than ever. Letting out a small gulp, Makoto spoke. Okay. So, if that's the case, I won't deny I've been getting pains in my body. Like something was forcing it to shift and churn. I don't know why, but if this is the reason I wanted to stop. By any means necessary, she said to the three, a tone they have grown accustomed to but one that Naruto approved of all the more. It was a tone of complete dead-set determination that of which could not and never will be broken. Honestly, Naruto could tell Makoto had a strong will not many could even meet or even begin to hope to match with. He had to say, Makoto was an interesting woman, that was for sure, but that did not mean he wasn't suspicious of her because he was, if only slightly. It's just that he had come to admire Makoto's determination and will, since it was like Kushina's really. Hey, good answer, Makoto. Though on the outside he showed no difference except the approval in his eyes showing. Very well then. Akemi will be the one to awaken your blood. So I want you to follow whatever she says till it's done. Understood? To which he got a quick nod. Seeing this, he turned his attention toward Akemi and nodded. Then let's begin. Akemi, if you will, to which the Biju nodded before walking up to Makoto. After doing so, Akemi spoke with a smile of her own which somehow eased some of Makoto's inner worries. She watched as Akemi placed her right hand on her forehead before speaking. Don't worry, Makoto-chan. This won't hurt a bit. Though I do got to say, thing will be different when you notice the changes, she said with a smirk, making Makoto quirk an eyebrow. What do you mean by changes tilde? Makoto said, only to pass out from the sudden overload of yukai shrouding her body which was coming from Akemi and her outstretched hand. She quietly looked at the passed out Makoto before looking back at Naruto, only to see him give her a nod and Kushina smile in gratitude. Seeing this, she continued. Alright, here we go. Akuma no Magiku. Akuma no Kai no Mezame. Demon Magic. Awakening of Demon Blood. With that, Akemi focused her yukai into Makoto further, only this time, it seeping within her and targeting the hidden Ukami blood with her. The technique she sued was something only she knew. It was sued like it was made out to be. It targeted one's inner genes, even to the watered-down versions, and literally awoke from within them. So when using this, Makoto's hidden heritage would be awoken, destroying all that made her human. Suddenly, without warning, a pressure of a non-existent gravity slammed down on them all, but, to Naruto, Akemi and Kushina, it wasn't anything they haven't felt before. I mean, one who has faced and beaten Biju and another that was a practically Biju and queen of the Kitsune will make you immune to such pressure, while Kushina was the container to Akemi and pretty much immune to it as well. This pressure was coming from Makoto, her form now having an outline of pure darkness. The pitchest of black surrounded her body and it seemed to grow more and more with each passing second. The pressure got higher and higher, further surprising Akemi on the inside. Soon enough, the black yokai surrounded Makoto fully in a humanoid cocoon. Yet through it all the three watching occupants said nothing but watched on, one curious, another interested and the last worried, with also excitement swelling in her body. It took only a few minutes, but soon enough the pressure lowered completely till it was like it wasn't even there, before the cocoon started to crack, with white lines appearing. No one breathed for a moment, that is until the cracks started to appear more and more until it came to the point the cocoon was surrounded with these visible cracks. And with that, the cocoon suddenly started to disappear as it flaked off like old paint before the flakes disappeared into practically nothing. Thus, this left behind the new Makoto. She wasn't all that changed except for a few things, which were, like Akemi said, she now had a few animalistic features to her body. Them being, 2 pair of black randomly twitching wolf ears, but, to Akemi's shock, 4 wolf tails upon her backside. That wasn't the only thing, for her canines were see-able, showing they were much longer than before as the nails on her hands became longer and sharper like claws. All in all though, Makoto didn't change that much. Akemi's eyes were slightly wide as were Naruto's own, but they were having similar thoughts running through their minds at what they were seeing before them. Oh my, Kami. She already has 4 tails, was Akemi's thought. 4 tails. Impressive. Very impressive, was Naruto's thoughts on the matter. Kushina's reaction though was the most expected. Kawaii, was her shout that awoke Makoto groggily. Before she felt a weight smash into her, she would have looked to see who it was. Before she felt this person doing something that sent shivers down her spine, and not being able to restrain herself let out a moan of approval. This got both Akemi and Naruto's attention, so when they looked at Makoto they saw to their immense amusement Kushina laying upon Makoto's back grinning childishly while she scratched Makoto's new appendages. She was like a child in a candy store really. Seeing her giddy excited expression and her wide gleaming violet eyes sent Akemi into a state, giggling as Naruto just smirked at the display. Well. Things are gonna get a lot more interesting, that I can tell. And oh how right he was. Flashback end. Ever since then, Makoto was shown the ropes of what she was by Akemi, who has known about her kind the longest. Which took a day or two, but Makoto was getting the hang of her new body and had already learned by Akemi how to transform, but didn't dare do so lest she destroy the very ship they stood upon. That didn't mean she wasn't able to transform into smaller versions of herself, which Akemi taught her, which was her being able to transform into a one-tailed cub. Which earned her a death hug from Kushina. Though that wasn't the only thing, for Makoto also learned from Akemi what the Ukami specialized in and helped her learn the ways of controlling her elements, which were both the darkness element and hellfire. Yet to Akemi's shock was her affinity in both elements extremely high. More so than she's seen with other demons from Makai and even some demon lords as well. That was why Akemi started helping her control the elements, which at first started out to be both incredibly hard to do so but also very destructive. It was one time where Makoto slipped with her controlling, and thus part of the ocean was completely turned into a giant crater with water still filling it. It was the crater's size though that was the problem. Because it was the size of the Ichibi. From then on, Naruto made completely sure that Makoto's control was at its peak, even if he had to improvise with the exercises to control her elements. He wasn't gonna have the ship destroyed like part of the ocean was. No, he certainly was not. But during those past 2 days, Makoto has been acting differently than before, or maybe it was something else. Which it was when both Kushina and Akemi could see that Makoto was being much more affectionate toward Naruto. Akemi theorized that Makoto's budding feelings for him grew ever so much more tremendously through her transformation, making her more courageous around Naruto than ever before. This earned Kushina's smile, knowing Makoto would finally be showing how determined she was to her captain and Naruto as well. But things also happened, because on the 9th day of their voyage during Makoto's training, did the oddly silent Kushina wish to speak with Akemi about something that was very important, that it was so serious she didn't want to tell Naruto or Makoto about it, and that's saying something if Naruto wasn't told. What she spoke to Akemi about though changed her life forever. Flashback. Okay Kushi-chan. What's wrong? You've been acting strange lately, so tell me. What's up? Questioned the worried Kitsune. She and Kushina were standing inside her room with Akemi standing in front of Kushina, with said woman sitting on the edge of her bed with an obvious look of nervousness. Honestly, it confused Akemi a bit, but she decided to see what was wrong with her former container. Taking a deep breath, Kushina looked up at Akemi, showing her nervous violet eyes. Well, it's just that. Akemi-chan. You know about me as long as I've known you. I mean, I like to think of ourselves as sisters, really. And I won't lie to you, since you would be able to tell if I was or not. Akemi nodded with this, while inwardly Kushina's words touched her heart. Truly, Kushina thought of them as sisters, and she agreed. They were honestly sisters in everything. Except blood, though, she idly thought. That's why. After thinking about my life, my battles, my experiences, everything, and compared to what Naruto-kun has faced, it shows that everything I've done can't even compare. Everything from when I was a child to now, Naruto-kun has always been there protecting me, training and fighting to keep our clan safe. Even now, he fights enemies that are far stronger than I could comprehend. Kushina further said as tears started to build up in her beautiful violet eyes, yet she refused to let them fall. Akemi looked at Kushina with a sad expression. Kushina. She started only to be interrupted when said woman just looked at her with an expression that practically made Akemi let out a small gasp. It was a pleading expression that was so fierce, so deep that it truly made such a hit into Akemi's heart that it hurt her so. The kitsune could only watch while suppressing the urge to hug Kushina right there, telling her it was okay, but that would be wrong. Kushina had, no, she needed to finish what she was gonna say. That's why. Akemi-chan. If there was any way. I mean, is there any possible way I can become a demon as well? I know this is a serious question, but, Akemi-chan. Like I told you before. You're like a sister to me, and I want to be able to fight, become stronger than I already am. I don't know why, but I feel like we'll be having many more battles ahead of us even if we left the elemental nations to get away from fighting. I just have this feeling we'll be going into another life full of fighting, and this time, Akemi-chan. Kushina's voice becoming more and more determined that it shocked the already surprised Akemi. Though when Kushina looked her in the eyes, the Kitsune Queen couldn't hold back a smile when she saw the once lovable violet orbs, now them being a pair of violet determined gems that seemed to be unable to fall, unable to lose, and most of all they let off a pure unbreakable and indestructible resolve that of which Akemi has only seen in one other person. That being Naruto. Hey, they're more alike than they realize. Shaking her head, Akemi stared down Kushina with an emotionless gaze that portrayed not a hint of what was going through her head as a tense silence followed through until Akemi spoke. I see. Are you absolutely certain of what you're asking? Are you truly willing to become a demon so you can fight by his Naruto-kun's side and completely throw away your humanity? Because if you do, there is no turning back. Her words cold as ice and hard as the strongest metal. Her crimson-slitted eyes staring at Kushina with not an ounce of any emotion. Only to Akemi's utter shock yet immense happiness that has brought a tear to her eye as Kushina not only glare into her eyes with her own determined ones. She literally stood right in front of Akemi staring at her without a hint of hesitation or fear. The intensity that was in her eyes only strengthened beyond what was there before. Honestly, it was like Akemi was staring right into the very eyes of Naruto himself. Soon enough though, Kushina spoke with not a single shred of both hesitation nor fear of what she was asking. Akemi-chan. I told you. I will do anything, and I meant it. I want to fight by his side and no longer having to look at his back as he fights. I want to be there, by his side. I told you once and I will tell you again if I must. I am willing to throw my humanity to fight alongside him. She finished standing tall before Akemi with her stare firmly in place, no sign of breaking nor shattering under the Kitsune Queen's own crimson ones. After seeing Kushina standing there completely straight and hearing her words over and over again within her mind, did Akemi finally break from her emotionless stature to a more sisterly one, which surprised Kushina even more so when the Biju slowly walked up to her and brought the younger woman into a hug. Too surprised was she. Did Kushina not see the tears spilling from Akemi's eyes nor the red glow coming from her? Kushi-chan. You have no idea how glad I'm hear you say those words. To hear you think of me like a sister. Even if you're foolish to think you're useless because you're not, you're anything but that. You are the one that drives Naruto-kun so far to do what he has done. You're the sole reason why he's done what he's done. But, I won't disagree with you, for some of what you say is true, she said, rearing her head back to look into Kushina's shocked violet orbs. There are always gonna be battles we all face, whether they be physical, mental or emotional, they will always be there. No matter where we go, there will always be enemies to fight, no matter how small or big they will be there. But then again, what fun is life without a little excitement, she said, a smirk making Kushina giggle at. But, if you are truly wanting to do this, to become a demon, then I know of one way that would do it, and also. Trailing off with a smirk did Akemi lean down toward Kushina before their noses were practically touching. Her smirk now turning into a vulpine kitsune grin that made Kushina blink dumbly at. It will also finalize us as true sisters. When I do this, we will be true-blooded sisters. This made Kushina's eyes widen ever so greatly that they threatened to pop out of their respective sockets. She couldn't believe what she just heard, yet even now the words echoed within her ears like a sounding horn. She just stood there staring at Akemi with a blank expression, before her face broke into such a grin that it slightly unnerved Akemi as her violet orbs swelled up in both shedding tears and excitement. Akemi knew that one of Kushina's small dreams was for her to be a true sister to her, not like they were now, but true sisters. Siblings of the same blood and flesh. Hell, they looked like twins already, but that was just an appearance. Well, except for the eyes, of course. Really? Akemi just nodded, confirming it completely with that Kushina let it loose. Woohoo! Thank you, Akemi Ne-chan. Thank you, Databane. She shouted jovially with her arms wrapped firmly around said kitsune queen, who at the moment was smiling at both Kushina's reaction and when she called her Ne-chan. Alright, you're welcome, but I need you to stop twirling me around so I can perform the technique, so please put me down and stand still. This is gonna be a very delicate procedure. Hearing the serious tone in her voice, Kushina quickly let go of Akemi and stood stock still. Seeing this, the Biju let loose a small smile before patting Kushina on the shoulder. I see you're ready, or maybe excited to get started. Either way, do not move while I do this. Okay? She got a nod from the red-headed Uzumaki. Her grin still in place, making Akemi shake her head even more with an amused smile before she stood up straight, her crimson-slitted eyes gaining a more serious glint. She watched when Akemi both her palms with her claws before mumbling words she couldn't even begin to pronounce, but it oddly sounded like she was speaking an incantation of some sort. After a minute or so, Akemi stopped her incantation before she spoke. Okay, here we go. Kitsune Magiku. Kitsune Renewal Tenso, Kitsune Magic. Kitsune Renewal Transfer. With that, Akemi slammed her hands on the floor before, to Kushina's amazement, the blood didn't splatter, but it started to form around her in a unique designed circle that looked oddly like a Fuinjutsu design. She didn't have time to further examine, for the blood-designed circle seemed to glow before it outright erupted in a crimson light that surrounded the startled yet still standing Kushina. She watched fascinated as the crimson blood-red glow seemed to get brighter and brighter before suddenly she felt herself becoming a bit drowsy. She never noticed the blood circle slowly swirl out of figure as the crimson glow intermingled with the blood, giving it a demonic crimson glow. Slowly the blood swirled around Kushina's drowsy figure before it stopped completely. Then without warning it shot up over Kushina's body from head to toe, before it slowly traveled into Kushina's mouth, yet she didn't respond to it or the taste. All she did was stand there with a drowsy expression. The bloody quickly traversing into her mouth and through body, entering every vein, artery and every other organ. That is when the blood, when it was fully inside Kushina, did. She suddenly glowed pure white in a blinding light too strong it made even Akemi shut her eyes from the blinding light, yet through it all a smile crept up onto her beautiful face. He. Now Kushi-chan is truly my sister. When she felt the light go down, did she slowly open her eyes to see a sight Akemi smiled greatly at. For it was her former container, now turned blood sister, laying on the wooden floor, and like Makoto a few changes to her appearance, but not so much. Her body more lean yet slim, but the sign of muscle within showed her body was built for extreme speeds that which none could decipher. Her long maroon blood-red hair now sprawled out on the floor, and her bangs covering her sleeping face, only her hair looking more like the finest of silk and the greatest of fur. Overall she didn't look the least bit changed, except for her extra appendages. them being to Akemi's slight shock, which soon turned to extreme pride when two crimson furry fox ears sat upon her head instead of where her human ears used to be, which they twitched ever so randomly, as did her nose, making her look ever so adorable. Her canines longer than usual and her nails now sporting claws much like Makoto. But what made Akemi feel so proud is what was flowing on Kushina's backside just an inch from her butt. That being 5 flowing 6 feet in length crimson fluffy foxtails. Oh my, Kami, 5 tails, already. Miko-chan was a surprise, but hey, you really are unpredictable, Kushina-chan. Then again, that's to be expected from my little sister. Akemi let loose a giggle of amusement that didn't seem to wake the sleeping newly turned Kitsune Uzumaki Kushina. Slowly Akemi walked up to her new sister before gently picking up her frame before laying her down in her bed before covering her up. That is when she laid a small kiss on Kushina's forehead, getting a small grumble from the sleeping redhead, making Akemi smirk. Naru-kun. She mumbled with a small pink hue rising to her face. It took everything Akemi had to not burst into laughter. She had a slight idea of what Kushina was dreaming of, and she could only say. The Kitsune genes were already affecting her deeply. Letting out a sigh, Akemi took one more look toward Kushina before walking toward the door, opening it before closing it behind her. Once she was outside though, did Akemi let out a sigh before a small smile grew upon her face. How long have you been there? She said, looking to her left to see her, Kushina and Makoto's captain Uzumaki D. Naruto leaning against the wall. His hair shadowing his eyes, which did not reveal anything that might be raging in his golden orbs. Though seeing as his body stance was tense, it showed he had been there for a while. Since the beginning, he answered, making Akemi close her eyes, knowing he heard Kushina's words. She looked toward him to see he hadn't moved from his spot, making her quirk an eyebrow in curiosity. That is before he spoke once more. Akemi-chan. Now that Kushihime has taken this path, as did Makoto-san, I want you to do everything you can to help train them in their powers, for I have a feeling we're gonna end up in a very hostile life. One that needs all of us ready to fight. We all need to be ready for the oncoming storm that's ahead of us. He spoke, to which Akemi just gave a nod signifying she understood. Seeing this, he continued. Good. Then go get some rest now, Akemi-chan. Training for the 2 starts tomorrow. Finishing his explanation, Akemi nodded before walking past him. But before he could react, Akemi spun around, and to his inner surprise did he feel a wet pair of lips peck his cheek. Which soon ended when a smiling Akemi pulled back, showing her grateful and, if his eyes were playing tricks on him, loving gaze. He didn't get time to say anything though when Akemi turned around and kept walking with a sway of her hips that could make any other man melt there on the spot. Good night, Naru-kun. With Akemi left, leaving behind a slightly confused Naruto before he just turned around, hiding his smirk, and went his way. Back to his quarters did he idly touch the cheek where he could still feel Akemi's wet lips were. Hey, little vixen. Suddenly out of nowhere, Naruto's eyes widened in both confusement but also pain before his hand suddenly lashed out to hold himself against the wall as the other went to his mouth. Cough, cough. Looking at his hand that he coughed into, his eyes widened slightly when he saw blood of all things. Scowling, he clenched his bloodied hand. Letting out a silent curse did he continue on, showing no other outward difference than usual, but on the inside was different. Damn it. What's wrong with me? Flashback end. After that day, many things have followed. For instance, Akemi stuck to her promise and started to train both Makoto and Kushina heavily in their new demonic powers, teaching them to further control their new energy source of Yukai that was just like chakra, only demonic and 100x denser and stronger than normal chakra. She trained them both physically and mentally in the powers, helping them get suited to their new appendages so they could get suited to them and use them in battle. Sure, Kushina had a hard time walking around like Makoto did at first when she was turned as well. Despite that though, Kushina oddly got the hang of it rather quickly, and even more so was able to use her tails like it was second nature, as did Makoto. Akemi explained that since Kushina had been her former container, she was already part Kitsune, thus she was able to get suited to her tails rather quickly, while Makoto had training early on, even if it was just a few days. Kushina also, to Akemi's surprise, was able to morph quite easily into her one-tailed kit state like she did, but then again Kushina was her former container, thus again anything a Kitsune does would come naturally to her. Thus the two continued their training with Akemi watching over them, correcting their mistakes and improving on them and their strengths. She explained to Kushina that like Makoto, her natural abilities had just went through the roof, making her all the more deadlier than before. She had also said like her the Ukami demons, and which specialized in their elements, did the Kitsune specialize in their own. That being the first one, Kitsune High, Foxfire, which Akemi said was able to not only to tear through Ningenkai's human world magma like butter and make it look like warm water in comparison to heat, it also was even up to part with the flames of hellfire themselves. It was also used as a self-sufficient body armor that Akemi only knew of. The woman taught her new sister how to do this, where manipulating the flames over her body, forming an armor of sorts that both protects you from any and all elements of fire, water or ice. That wasn't the only thing though, for she also taught her how to manipulate the flames and bend it to her will to create weapons ranging from swords to katanas and kunais to shuriken. Though that wasn't the only thing she worked on, for during the nights Akemi had her and Makoto meditating, making them further their control in their yukai so they could strengthen their powers. She also had them further strengthening their physical prowess, seeing as they were physically fit, yes, but to Akemi's standards they looked pathetic. She had them doing exercises that would make Maeda Guy himself cry in both pain and fear before running back to the warm presence of his mother. That's how extreme it was. Due to both Kushina and Makoto being demons, their bodies were much more stronger and durable to handle than humans could ever hope to have. That was why the training Akemi put them through didn't turn them into a puddle of mush by the end of each day. Because Akemi had them doing exercises like running laps around the deck, doing 100 laps, 50 push-ups, 30 pull-ups, 50 sit-ups with weights attached to their bodies. But these weren't normal weights, oh no, they were yukai-induced weights that looked normal weights on the outside, but truly they each had enough weight to shatter a human's body into nothing but dust. For example, on their arms their weights were both 5 tons for both arms. On their legs was 10 tons for both legs, with the one more weight on their waist, it acting as a belt, which it weighed to around 15 tons. Together added with their total added weight that was 90 tons, equaling to 90,000 pounds. Good thing Naruto had self-restraining and strengthened C's on the ship, or those two would have fallen through long ago. So, you can say by the end of their first day of training both Kushina and Makoto were flat out on the deck cursing the laughing Akemi, calling her the slave driver of Makai. It only got worse for the two when Akemi said she would be increasing the weights by the beginning of each week. This continued on for a few days until the 10th day of their voyage appeared, but by then during their training the girls have noticed something. That being was Naruto. He was acting himself, yes, it was just that he looked to be struggling with something, like he was in some sort of pain similar to Makoto's, only worse. They first suspected this when Makoto caught him coughing uncontrollably in his room when the door was slightly open. Then another sign was him becoming more pale each passing day, making him look more deathly ill. Yet another sign that he was sweating more and more even during the strange cold day they had, he still looked to be burning up. When asked if he was okay, he just waved it off that he was fine. But Akemi knew otherwise, for she was sensing something from Naruto, and it was no sickness. It was something else entirely. She didn't know what it was, but it truly scared her. The Kitsune queen and leader of the Biju. She didn't know what it was, but she knew it was powerful, but also old. It was so old. What she was feeling from Naruto was some ancient power that she couldn't even begin to describe honestly when she first felt it. It as like she was suddenly tossed into a giant hurricane with her being in the eye of it. Pure power is what she felt. It made her feel like a newborn kiting that was just brought into existence. This power dwarfed her own tremendously and made even the Jubi's own pale in comparison. Whatever this thing was that was affecting Naruto though, it was killing him. That she could tell just by looking at him. It finally got the point where it got all of their attention. It was on the 13th day of their voyage. The day that changed everything for one Uzumaki D. Naruto. Flashback. Standing on the deck of their caravel was one Uzumaki D. Naruto. Only he looking more pale than usual, deathly pale actually. His eyes bloodshot from what none could say as sweat poured from him like a river. Even through this he looked unfazed as he watched the girls train in their new powers. It was a sight to see really, and he couldn't help but feel proud of them and grateful to Akemi for training them. Though he had to scowl mentally when he felt the state he was in, he didn't know what it was, but lately he could feel himself getting weaker and weaker. Yet he could still feel something more happening, but he just couldn't figure it out. As far as he's known, he hasn't been sick not once because of his abnormal healing that was on par with Kyuubi's own. So then, what was happening to him? Bu bump. Grasping the wooden railing, Naruto let loose a grunt as he felt it coming once more. It happened every day randomly, a spasm of pain from his heart. Tightening his grip, Naruto fell to his first knee. He couldn't see horrified expressions from the women or their screams for him, screaming out his name in worry. All he could do grip the place where his heart was before he gasped yet again. Bu bump, cough, cough, He grunted as he couldn't catch it in time as his blood flew out of his mouth in a painful hiss. He didn't know what was going on, but now this agonizing pain just got worse. He didn't know, but it was like he'd just been stabbed in the heart with a drenched poison dagger. He gripped the rail so tight it cracked before exploding in nothing but splinters. Naruto couldn't feel anything any longer. He realized he was losing his senses. His sight, smell, hearing, everything. He didn't even feel the three women racing up to him nor see their terrified expressions. All he could feel was the immense pain in his heart. The coppery taste of his blood on his tongue as his limbs trembled and shook. He couldn't see it, but he was slowly coming a thought that made his very soul scream in denial. Am I dying? The very thought made him want to scream and roar in denial. He couldn't die now. He had Kushina again. They were just starting their lives together. No, he absolutely refused to die. Not with some damned sickness. I won't die. I won't die by this pathetic disease. Bu bump. No, I refuse. No, I won't die. I won't die, damn it. Bu bump. Gaw. He let a hoarse gasp as blood once more flew from his mouth. Only this time, with his eyes now opened halfway, did he see the blood not hit the wooden floor but it splatter against the horrified face of Kushina. He would have smiled and told it was okay. He would have wiped her shedding tears away if he could move his hand. He would have kissed her to show he was okay. Yet he couldn't, for all he could do was fall to his other knee, and without able to grasp anything did he start to fall forward. He idly noted his eyes closing despite his inner struggle to keep them open, for he knew if he closed them, if his eyes closed, they may never open again. He didn't feel the impact of him falling to the deck, nor could he feel the blood pooling from his mouth now unrestrained like it's been for days. He could hear his heart start to slow down and feel himself getting colder and colder each second. All he could do was shift his gaze toward the three women, and it pained him to see their horrified faces. Their terror-filled eyes made him want to relieve them of their fear. Show them he wasn't gonna die. Yet he couldn't even do that. He felt so weak, so helpless, so defenseless. Was this how his father felt before, when he was surrounded? Seeing Kushina's violet orbs now letting tears fall from her eyes did gather up every ounce of what strength and sheer willpower did he have left. Did Naruto raise his hand, which gained her attention, which she immediately grasped his hand and pulled at her to face where it was cupping her tear-streaked cheek. Naruto could only gaze into her eyes as the darkness started to overcome his vision. He could see Akemi doing everything she could to heal him using whatever Yukai healing technique she knew as was Makoto, but he honestly thought it was to no prevail. It probably was. Naruto-kun. Get up. You're okay. See, come on. She uttered. He could see her mouth moving yet heard not a word, showing his hearing gone as well. He just smiled, which was all he could really do. The blood leaking from his mouth gathering up in his smile. This smile worried Kushina very much so, for she couldn't wave off the feeling of dread building up in her stomach. Her eyes widened in horror when his eyes slowly started to close, which she desperately tried to keep him awake. Naruto-kun. Keep your eyes open. Damn it. Stay awake. She yelled, practically doing everything she could. Yet it proved to no avail, for he just couldn't stop his eyes from dropping no matter how much he struggled. Damn it. Is this how I'm gonna die? By a damned disease? Damn it. I refuse to die. I fucking refuse to do so. I won't. I won't die here. And you won't, young one. Naruto mentally only had time to quirk a mental eyebrow before he completely lost consciousness, further worrying the three women. He never felt himself being carried by Akemi and into his room, for all he saw were the flash of Kushina's eyes before all he saw was darkness. Then nothing. Naruto's mindscape. Darkness. That's all he could see. All he could feel was himself floating, touching nothing solid and floating on nothing but air. Slowly opening his eyes, did Naruto see himself standing on practically nothing, which really didn't surprise him since he had a small idea of where he was. He looked around himself to see nothing but the darkness of an empty void that which felt could suck up any and all living things. As he silently gazed at the surrounding area, he never saw a dark portal appearing behind him, with it walking out a figure as tall as he was, maybe a few inches or so. "Welcome, child." Hearing this somewhat distorted yet baritone voice, did Naruto quickly spin around his stance, tense and guarded. Only for his eyes to widen partially when he saw the man in front of him. His mere presence honestly shook him to his very core, yet he did sense something about this person that made him feel a wave of familiarity. For he was staring at a man that stood the same height as himself, or maybe a few inches taller, and he seemed to have some of the same armor as himself, but not all the same. He had a very built stature that he could tell very easily, but, other than that, everything else about the man was strange. For he was mostly covered in armor from his giant legs and feet, with them covered in leather boots with metal greaves that seemed to work like his own, only these were strapped to the man's legs. Around his waist was some sort of belt that had two protrusions of bronze metal, one extending upward to his chest and the other downwards. In this belt was red leather straps, with two of them dangling from his waist. On his chest was, from what he could tell, a tight black shirt of some sort that showed his massive muscled chest. Next up was the man's arms. The right one, to his surprise, has the same pauldron as his own, it being silver in color and same demonic design, and below it on his forearms and hand was a strangely designed gauntlet with metal clawed fingers. On his left arm, though, is what really got him, for his part of his arm was covered by the crimson, slightly burned red cowl, while below this showed something that truly made Naruto wonder who this man was. For it was a gauntlet of such size he wondered if it was made by demons themselves. For it was a gauntlet that had unique designs that looked too alien to Naruto to be human, plus the crimson glow coming from the designs only strengthened his suspicions. These designs went straight toward a skull of some sort which glowed yellow as its eye sockets glowed blood red. Finally ending with the man's appearance was the strangely designed bronze pauldron on his left shoulder that seemed to look like sort of a bat's wing. Under this, connecting with the crimson burned cowl, was the rest of it covering the man's upper chest, collarbone, his mid-back and head, completely shadowing what was seen of his hair. That in itself being strange, for his hair was a complete white with a light bluish tint. His skin tone, from what he could see, was tanned, very much so borderline bronze, and from what Naruto could see was some kind of mark on the man's forehead, with it glowing with crimson lines that reminded him of runes. Lastly was the man's eyes. They froze him on the spot, for they just radiated so much power, wisdom, and control that has made Naruto wonder if this man was some kind of deity. His eyes were utterly and complete azure. It was like staring into twin pools of the deepest ocean. Oddly, he felt these eyes were similar to his own when he was younger. Naruto couldn't help but feel like he's known this person from somewhere, yet he doesn't. Does he? The man seemed to notice his questioning yet curious eyes and spoke with a voice so filled with both divine yet demonic power that it sent a chill up his spine, but there wasn't ill intent toward him at all, only something akin to curiosity mixed with something akin to pride. "Young one, I'm sure you have many questions and I will answer them. But first we have much to talk about. Which includes yourself and the situation you're in, and with it involves myself, and your birth mother." Naruto's eyes almost popped out of his head when he heard this, but stayed silent as the man continued. "First off, let me introduce myself. I am the second horseman of the 4 horsemen, with me being the youngest. My name is War, and we Uzumaki D. Naruto have much to discuss." Naruto just glared back at him, wondering how he knew his name. "Very well then, talk." With that, the man now revealed War spoke. "Real world. Is he gonna be okay, Akemi-ne-chan?" said a teary-eyed Kushina as she and Makoto were kneeling at the bedside as Akemi sat by Naruto, her hands glowing a greenish hue with a red tint. They had seen Naruto start coughing when he first seen gripping the railing, and only got more worried when fell to his knee. That's when they rushed to see him, only to see his state getting worse and worse. They tried to get his attention, yet he didn't respond, making their fears for his very life was on the line. That was when Akemi quickly picked up his body and shot toward his room with them following to help quell down what his pain was. Which was why at the moment Naruto was laying on his bed with sheets covering him, a wet folded towel to cool his scorching fever. They were surprised to see blood, though when he coughed every so often, especially when he had fallen to the deck, it honestly scared them. Of course they had their suspicions, but, now seeing it real, they could see Naruto was truly in serious life-threatening pain. The questions though piled up in their minds as to what this disease was. What was it doing to Naruto? How did he get in the first place? But the most important question was, why didn't he tell them what was wrong with him? Sighing, Akemi stopped her ministrational healing before speaking with a small frown. I'm honestly not sure, Kushina-chan. At first Naruto's heart was fine this morning, but now it's just plain chaotic. Its unnatural beats is what's worrying me. At one point his heart beats so fast I'm afraid it's gonna shoot out of his chest, and the other is when he just stops beating utterly and completely. I don't know what's wrong with him, all I know is that's affecting him and making his blood slowly fill up in his lungs. It's been from what I can see been happening frequently and for a while now. I can also sense something else in him is affecting his body in general, causing his eyes to have been so bloodshot they look ready to bleed out tears, and his abnormal fever. She explained, a worried frown on her face as she gazed back down on the man she had come even closer to loving. Kushina could only nod her head before looking back at Naruto's body. Seeing his chest raising up and down irregularly scared her, as well as the pained expression on her face. Looking toward Makoto, she saw the woman almost ready to bawl her eyes out, yet she held her tears back, not wanting to show weakness before any of them. She felt the same way but was used to see Naruto in these situations. That didn't mean she wasn't worried, far from it actually. Because she was feeling absolutely broken without him here. She couldn't honestly even begin to imagine her life without him here. It was a terrifying thought that she had immediately crushed. She knew Naruto, and he wouldn't die so easily. For he was just tough to kill. He slaughtered armies, faced and beat in cages that could level a village, and he being the only man on this planet that she knew that has faced and beaten a Biju with only his strength alone. He won't die, and he certainly won't be killed by some pathetic little disease. I know he'll come out of this. I know he will. Was her thoughts on the one she loved, that is, before she pulled Makoto into a hug. Seeing the woman took it quickly and pressed her face into her shoulder. She rubbed Makoto's back, trying to soothe her, while she herself was still trying to hold back the tears in her eyes. Despite knowing he would come out okay in the end, it was still so heart-wrenching to see him in such pain. Akemi, though like Kushina, knew Naruto was gonna be okay, yet she was more concerned about the energy within Naruto. His chakra was now by no means chakra at all, for it was shifting and morphing in a way. She didn't know what it was, but knew one thing, that his chakra was now changing completely from human chakras and to a more demonic feel to it. Though what was even stranger was his chakra was also giving off feels of divine as well, so that confused her even more. But what was really worrying her was that his energy was growing rapidly beyond what a human body could hold. She was guessing that was what is wrong with him, but she couldn't be completely sure. All she could tell was that his energy was rapidly increasing. What was scary though, was that his energy was already surpassed hers by far. What's happening to you, Naru-kun? Well, all three of them are about to find out. Because unknown to them all was that Naruto's body was giving off a crimson-black streaked outline. Naruto's mindscape. I see, so you're telling me you're a being called the Nephilim, with it being an old race that's existed before angels or demons. Them being called the Old Ones, yet after a cataclysmic war only 4 of you remained, them being called the 4 Horsemen, them being named Fury, Strife, Death, and finally you, War. Which you 4 served this organization called the Charred Council, as your original goal is to protect all of mankind before the council made you all only come in to protect them when these 7 seals broke. Thus the war of the apocalypse would begin when all 7 broke. And you told me later on you were tricked by the council to arrive right before the 7th seal was broken, thus shattering the ironclad rule, and you stripped of your powers? Afterwards you fought a one-man war through both demons and angels, finding out the council had framed you. So after you defeated this Abaddon and took the 7th seal before shattering it, you waged war with the council with your siblings. This war brought upon the end war, ravaging the planet and all its inhabitants. That is after you and the other horsemen won, you left for the White City known as Heaven. There you had a council with the higher-ups of Heaven, asking for a meeting with this Maker, the ultimate entity that created everything known to mankind, demon and angel-wise. You asked him to recreate the planet and have it begin anew with a more stable mindset after this. You and the rest of your siblings lived a life of solitude as the mediators between heaven and hell. Is that correct? Naruto said as he floated before War, his eyes staring into the twin pools of liquid sapphire. The man gave a nod of confirmation with a faraway look in his eyes. Yes. Every word of it is the complete truth. To which Naruto could see the man was telling the truth, for even if the man's eyes were impassive as ever, each word was filled with the utmost honesty that he couldn't help but believe him. But, I see. But what does this have to do with you, me, or my current situation? Or for that matter, how does this involve my mother? He said, utterly confused. War anticipated this to where he just spoke to Naruto once more, only this time something akin to sadness in his tone. Ah yes. Well, let me start from the beginning. For you do remember the woman named Uriel, correct? Which Naruto nodded. He remembered how War explained of the woman, her being the champion of heaven and its commander of the angel forces. He idly noted during his explanation of her that War seemed to drift off a bit in his words. Yes, I remember her, but what does she have to do with anything? Which War just let out what seemed to be a sigh but sounded more like a grunt. Well, she is the whole reason, for you see, during my time in solitude I met Uriel once more, and that was when she had requested a duel against me again, only this time not out of petty vengeance or spite but out of wanting to see who was stronger. She was strong. Stronger than any other I've ever fought, especially with how she grew stronger and stronger through the war. Our battle shook our very realm and scared my other siblings. Even my older brother Death saw the fight as both entertaining yet chaotic, but I ended up defeating her. I expected her to be angry with me, but, to my surprise, she was satisfied, you could say, and ever since then we grew closer and closer to the point we fell in love. We had to keep our relationship a secret though, for it was forbidden for an angel to love a Nephilim, and doing so without secret relationship did Uriel end up bringing forth our first and last child. When Naruto heard the last, he could hear both the sadness and anger clear in War's tone as the man's fists clenched tightly. You see, the child was a newborn baby boy, and we loved him and cared for him deeply to the point we couldn't bear being separated for almost a day. Though no matter how good things went, it all ended up crashing down, for a spy from heaven found out about us and told the higher-ups in heaven, and soon word spread to all of heaven, and then my siblings found out. Though unlike my siblings, which had protected us from the forces of heaven, did Uriel and myself see no other choice when we saw the full might of heaven come crashing down on us. We did the only thing we could do. And that was to send our child to earth, knowing heaven hadn't known of his existence. We didn't have time to even name our child before we and Uriel went to join my siblings in the battle against heaven, and this is where in the end we all caused an apocalypse in heaven, thus destroying all of us. We all died, to which the Maker replaced us with new gods and protectors. But not even he, the Maker himself, didn't know me and Uriel's child was still alive. He further explained, making Naruto's eyes widen, already piecing together what War was telling him. Everyone from the past except for myself passed on, for I lived on as a soul to live in my son, to where he had descendants and I passed on to them, and so on and so forth, but due to my overwhelming power that was within that body, it started to harm them inwardly, for my power. Their heritage was leaking, and just a drop of my blood entering their system would either tear a normal human to pieces or give them fast-acting disease that attacks the heart. I see you're piecing this together, that's good, he said, seeing the suspecting expression come over Naruto's face. And how does this involve my mother? I don't even know her or my father. How did she survive the disease? To which War gained an expression filled with the utmost sadness, yet a hint of sadness as well. That's easy, because for every descendant we had, they had at least one child before they succumbed to the disease. Though out of every single descendant, your mother was the one person that reminded me so much of Uriel, it was shocking. I can't tell you her name, for even I myself don't know, because the only thing I remember of her is the day she gave birth to you. You see, she had the disease since she was born, but even that didn't stop her, for she fought through it unintentionally, or not, her sheer willpower kept her from dying. On the day of your birth, though, from what I can remember, she had kept you in her womb since she was on the run, from what I remember her calling them Marines. Either way, she had given birth to you in the elemental nations. I can tell you this, though, even when she was dying she loved you dearly, like any mother would have. Even when she was dying she had the strength to embrace your small form and give you your name before passing on. Truly, your mother was one of a kind, he explained to the wide-eyed Naruto. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, yet it was all true, every single word. War's words were filled with the honest to Kami damn truth. No matter how much he wanted to deny it, he couldn't, but when he heard about his mother he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride of what she did for him during the time he was in her womb. Though when he heard about these Marines chasing her down, where was his birth father? Why wasn't he protecting her? So many unanswered questions rolled into his mind, yet the one thing he did know was that he would get his answers from these Marines, and there will be no denying that. I see. Then. That would mean. Getting a nod from the man before he to Naruto's shock smiled on his once stony face. This smile though just radiated pride, and it was all aimed on him. For reasons unknown, Naruto felt like he was being smiled at by his father Ryu once more. Yes. You're the next descendant, and I gotta say you've truly taken up my mantle as a warrior of war. From what I could see in your memories, you were the epitome of chaos, carnage, blood, war everywhere you followed. It was such a sight to see. Then again. You did it all for that woman. Kushina. She oddly reminds me of both Uriel and your mother. He muttered, to which Naruto just quirked an eyebrow before War shook himself out of his thoughts. Either way, I would suspect you're wondering why we're talking like this since you think you're dead. Well, let me explain. Unlike everyone else, you Naruto were born with some demonic power in you, which was from your father from what I can assume. Anyway, due to this, the disease was blocked off for a good few years of your life until it reached the point where you are the age you are now, but due to the age you are now, it's only strengthened the disease farther than ever before, where it's become an instant lethal poison. I can only say you inherited your mother's willpower to survive for how long you have. Even now you're still alive, just in a comatose state, with those three women doing everything they can to keep you alive. Naruto just gained a small smile when he heard this, as the faces of Kushina, Akemi and Makoto flashed in his eyes. That's when he still remembered the situation he was in, making him scowl. Then, what was the use of telling this to me? What was the use of you explaining everything to me if I'm still gonna die? To which War just let out an amused chuckle before he walked toward Naruto, making him raise an eyebrow in curiosity. Easy. Since you're the first one to survive when the disease has evolved to such a degree, and you living giving me enough time to awaken now gives me the chance to finally awaken to the blood so you could live. For you see, the only way you will live is when I release your mother's, and by extension my and Ural's blood will it completely and forever flush out the disease forever. Not even your offspring will gain this disease. Though this will also change you from being a human into what I am, or was that being a Nephilim, thus forever changing you. Naruto, knowing this after piecing everything together, nodded. I see, but would that mean I lose my other abilities? This made War shake his head in negative before he outstretched his hand, and to Naruto's surprise did Chaos Eater appear in a pillar of blue-black streaked flames. He watched as War expertly swung the blade in the air before stabbing it into the non-existent ground, making white cracks appear to his confusion. No, you won't lose any of those abilities, only that your chakra has now changed and strengthened beyond all measure of what anyone could ever guess. You being the first person of a hybrid between a Nephilim and angel, your energy is your own and no name can be called in history of it. Also, since the blood is gonna be awakened, I'll be passing off my memories of how to use the powers given to you, but don't think for a second you're invincible. You will still need to train and perfect these powers. Naruto nodded at this, knowing nothing ever comes free without a price that he knew. Yes, I know. But if I do this, what will happen to me exactly? To which War closed his eyes in thought before speaking. Truthfully, I have no idea, since this has never happened before, but I would say some of my and Ural's appearance would come into you. Your personality though is your own, only in appearance will you change. Other than that, I can say your overall skills and abilities would skyrocket beyond measure. For instance, your strength right now can topple a Biju of both A8 tail and the 9th tail, but if you do this, your strength will be even beyond that of a titan, making your abilities to shift the very earth, which I got to say is very impressive, will enable you to topple even a nation if you truly tried to do so. Your speed will considerably increase to the point you'll be able to move faster than the speed of light itself, seeing as the only thing that's gonna be taken away is your enormous height, making you stand at the height you're at now. Your muscles will be compacted yet still have the strength and speed you always had. Your sixth senses will also increase, as well as your reflexes, to where you can dodge an attack at point blank. Also, I'm gonna be passing off one enhancement of mine that goes along with Chaos Eater. You'll see why later on though. Hearing this, Naruto nodded, seeing War was coming to a close with his explanation. Honestly though, he just wanted to hurry and return back to the living world and reassure the girls he was okay. Lastly is that you cannot die by human, demon or angel-wise, for even myself don't know the true extent of your durability, but I can say that if I can take the injuries have been dealt with as did Uriel and yourself before this, then I'd say you literally can't die. Or it would just take a lot to do so. This made Naruto nodded while on the outside he showed no real emotion while on the inside he was a bit happy that he would live as long as the girls were. War seeing the area around them shift showed they didn't have much time. Naruto, hurry, make your choice, either grasp the handle of Chaos Eater and you shall awaken the blood, or dawn. Tea and die here and now, it's your choice, but time is running short. Your body is dying. Hearing this, Naruto didn't even hesitate, for when he just grasped the handle did he see War give a chuckle before speaking. I see you made your decision. Then be ready for a world of pain. That's all Naruto heard before his vision was blinded by a flash of white and an unimaginable searing pain slam into his body like tsunami of magma. As Naruto disappeared, War slowly closed his eyes as the light hit himself as well, making his body slowly fade away into nothing but blue particles of light. Finally, I can go home. I can see you again, brothers and sisters, and I can see you once more. Uriel-chan. With that, War's body completely disappeared forever, showing the last horseman disappeared, leaving a legacy of himself and his love to roam the earth. Oh, the chaos. Real world. Akemi-chan, are you sure there's nothing more we can do? Makoto asked, to which Akemi just shook her head sadly. It's already been an hour since Naruto was put to bed, and since then his irregular heartbeat only got worse with each passing minute, while the energy that had built up in him had already, to Akemi's inner shock, surpassed the legendary Jubi's own by leaps and bounds, making it look pathetic in comparison. Since then though, Naruto's body began to spasm uncontrollably as blood started to leak from his mouth, nose, ears and even eyes. That was when his body just stopped, utterly and completely. That was 5 minutes ago. No, there's nothing more I can do. En Naru-kun. H's, DD, she didn't get to finish though, for suddenly out of no. Was the painful scream ripping from Naruto's mouth. Spinning around did the three girls see, to their utter shock, Naruto gripping the sheets, practically tearing them, his eyes scrunched up shut with his mouth open, letting loose a painful scream. His eyes practically now glowing sapphire, unlike his usual golden eyes. But the one thing that got their attention was the aura coming off him. For it was not only white in color, it was outlined in gold but streaked with crimson and black, as the aura itself just outlined Naruto's body like a blanket of fire. It spread across him as his scream only got louder and louder, only the fires didn't show a hint of burning him. They hurriedly rushed toward him only for the flames to lash out at the floor in front of them, making them stop before it hit them. They saw it retract back into the blanket of fire. They could only stare as the flames covered Naruto's lower body and upper chest. Through it all, Akemi was staring at Naruto and the flames covering him with wide eyes. What the hell? I saw him die. But this energy. It's the same energy I felt coming from Naru-kun earlier, only this time. It's more concentrated, more powerful. What is going on here? That's when she and the other two saw the flames slowly cover up to Naruto's neck. They could only watch lest they get hit by the flames as he let loose one more scream that shook their very ship as the flames completely covered his face. His voice suddenly went silent as the flame blanketed over his face and hair. Sudden enough, the flaming aura completely surrounded and encased Naruto in its fiery blazing aura of energy and power. The flames strangely enough not burning the sheets or wood. Watching this, the three girls could only stare. Akemi-chan. What is going on? Makoto said, her eyes stuck on the form of where her captain and precious person was laying. Kushina just nodded, trying to think on what was happening to her love. Akemi just looked at them both before letting a small sigh before glancing back at the flames. Honestly, girls, I have no idea what's going on anymore. All I know is that Naruto is alive, but inside those flames, something about him is changing. I can feel it. The way she said it made both Kushina and Makoto audibly gulp before they looked back into the humanoid blanketed flames that held within their love interest. They truly hoped he was okay, for they would have jumped in and tried to get him out, but they had a feeling those flames would do a lot more than just burn them. They all didn't need to wait long though. Bu bump, bu bump. The sudden beat of a heart somehow sounded the area, making the three girls snap their attention toward Naruto's laying figure, the beating getting louder and faster with each passing second. It only got louder when, to their shock, did the humanoid blanketed fire move, showing he was sitting up without making a sound. They watched in bated breath as the man in the cloak of fire stood up as the blanket of fire hid any and all that showed it was Naruto underneath that aura of sheer power. Seeing the person coming closer to them, did they freeze in place when the blanket of fire started to their surprise unravel around the person in a spinning vortex, slowly showing the person underneath. As it did so, did Akemi suddenly feel herself getting even more uneasy than ever before. The godly power coming from this figure was shaking her to her very core. Not even the Jubi could match up to this power. She and the other two watched in rapt attention, as the fiery aura unraveled from the person's feet and on upward, showing Naruto's armored feet, then legs and waist, only this time wearing some kind of belt. On up it showed the bare muscled chest of Naruto, only his skin tone now a bit more tanned than usual and his sickly pale wiped clean. Going up, the flames showed his arms, showing their armored gauntlets and pauldrons, with them being pure silver in color instead of the usual black. On up was shockingly a pure crimson hooded cowl that draped over Naruto's chest and back and his shoulders, with the hood completely over his head. That's when, as the flames fully unraveled, did it show Naruto's shadowed face. His face set in his usual stone-firm expression, with his mouth set in an impassive state, with only his eyes gaining their attention. And what eyes they were! For just those few seconds they were staring into two twin pools of liquid azure that seemed to just glow with an inner power that sent chills up their backs, but even more so made their face practically burn as their cheeks just flushed a good shade of crimson. They could only gape even more when Naruto removed the cowl over his head to show his normal spiky long golden black streaked hair, only this time the ends of his hair having white ends. And lastly the same ruined crimson mark on his forehead going downward over his eyes, thus making him look even more unique. In their opinion, it vanished though, for soon they vanished, returning to Naruto's normal golden orbs, them now holding an amused look at the girl's expressions. He slowly spread out his arms, even if he was regretting what he was gonna do. "Well, you girls just gonna stand there and stare at me? Are you gone?" He never got the chance to finish before he was tackled by three blurs, two of them crimson, the other a raven-colored blur. He idly noted himself flying back with three pair of arms wrapped around his torso and the three female figures pressed against him. "Naruto-kun," was the worried shout of the three girls as the hour slammed into his bed with them on top of him, as his bed sinked further by their combined weight. He looked at them, not caring the position they were in, and mentally hid himself when he saw their concerned and fearful expressions, even more so when he saw their tear-streaked cheeks. Letting loose a small smile, he spoke, "I'm sorry. I worried you girls. I'll explain everything. You all deserve to know." With that he surprised them all, especially Akemi and Makoto, when he wrapped his arms around them all before pulling them closer to him, making them freeze before seeing his caring golden eyes. Did they just snuggle into him, awaiting for his explanation? Seeing this, he opened his mouth and begun his explanation. Flashback end. And so he did. He explained to them all what was wrong with him, his heritage and his meeting with war. He further explained what was causing him to sick in the first place. Suffice to say, the girls were shocked immensely. To hear of all that Naruto went through was just crazy. When they heard about his heritage concerning war, well, let's just say Kushina and Makoto were placed in a shocked state, while Akemi just passed out due to the immense shock. To think a descendant of that man still lived, and that being Naruto, was just too much for even her. Though for the rest of the day the girls never left Naruto's side, for they just stuck to him like glue. Apparently he could see this had worried them all more than they showed, so he didn't say anything about their actions and just went to sleep that day with the girls hugging onto him forever, wanting to know he was still there. He couldn't deny though he had a very good sleep that night. But on the next day things changed, not with the girls or Naruto, but of something else, and that was during the girls' routine training along with Naruto's own. He needed to get used to his slightly changed body and powers he had gained from his ancestor war. It was during this time they could finally see an island nearby, with Naruto and the crew. Standing on the deck looking out at the closing-in island was a man that stood a good 6'5", with a figure that could be described as both a ripped figure if the extremely ripped chest and 10-pack was anything to go by. That didn't mean his muscles were overly huge though, for they were compacted, giving him the appearance of a lithe figure. This shows his body is built for both speed and strength. His skin tone was that of a tan tone, almost bronze, especially in the sunlight. His face was both well-proportioned and masculine, not a hint of baby fat anywhere. He wore black leather boots with silver metal greaves strapped to them. Following up his legs were black cargo pants with silver metal plates strapped to the sides of his legs. Around his waist was a belt that had a strange buckle of some sort, which it split in two directions. One sheet of golden metal shot straight up from the buckle covering part of the man's chest. As the other piece of metal was more of a protective plate going downward. In the middle of this buckle was red leather straps that were strapped firmly around the man's waist with two of them hanging loosely from the buckle. He had no shirt which showed his ripped chest and steel hard 10-pack. The only article of clothing seen on his chest was a crimson cowl of sort that's covered the man's upper chest, and both his shoulders, while the hood of the cowl completely covered his head, hiding his hair from view and shadowing his face almost completely. Lastly, over his shoulders were metal spalders, with the right one being silver in color and it having the design of a demon's snarling face within, while the other was more of a giant bat's wing, only this spalder being pure black in color. On both his forearms were silver gauntlets that had demonic designs etched within, as the metal-plated gloves showed the clawed fingers that seemed like that of a monster's claw. His fists were at ease, but his whole body was tense and ready for the slightest attack. On the man's shoulder was a giant blade that looked to be unworldly in design, with it being as tall as the man himself, maybe a few inches smaller, it being the famed Chaos Eater. Finally, though, was the man's soul-piercing golden eyes that which seemed to glow from under the shadows of his hood. This man was Uzumaki D. Naruto, and right now him and the girls were on course to this island that which they could see was populated, so that means they could finally get information on where they are and get some supplies. "Oi, Naru-kun. We'll be reaching the island in a few more minutes," said a voice from above him. Looking up, did he see the Kitsune Biju Akemi, who was wearing her same battle-ready kimono as before when he first met her. He gave a small smile before nodding in acceptance. "Good, we shall deploy anchor when we reach port. Keep a lookout for any other ships, Akemi-chan." She gave a mock salute with a grin before going back to her job. That's what she mainly did on the ship, was be the lookout, since she had the greatest sight of them all. That didn't mean she didn't have Tower talents, far from it, because he had seen firsthand of her amazing healing talents, thus he had appointed her as the doctor of the crew. "You know, Naruto-kun, I don't know why, but when I see you looking out at the sea, it's like you were born to be out here." "Tt Ebane," said a loving melodic voice from behind him. Looking over his shoulder, did he see the smiling Kushina walking up to his side. She wearing something akin to a more close combat clothing, yet it still showed her perfect hourglass figure. She wore black shinobi sandals with tight-fitting black cargo pants like himself, only they hugged her figure like a second skin, as did her crimson tank top that acted like a second skin as it showed her well-developed DD cup bust. Over her shoulders was a long-sleeved crimson trench coat with the Uzumaki swirl embedded on the back of the coat. Lastly was her original katana from the one she used as a child back the Uzumaki clan that Naruto had given to her early on, strapped her to hip. Her lovely maroon-red bangs were held back on the left side of her face by a yellow hairpin showing her heart-shaped face. She had her kitsune tails and ears hidden since they were about to go into a populated area, and it was best they didn't draw too much attention to themselves. Then again, Naruto himself was a beacon of attention, especially with how he looks. Sighing, he spoke, "Ma, you may be right. For some reason, just being out here on the open sea truly feels like home. I don't know why though." Kushina just giggled as she stood at his side watching the island now visible town coming in the distance. "Him who knows," she mumbled as she shifted her gaze onto him. She couldn't help but gaze at his new appearance. Even if it was overly changed, it was still a sight to see. He looked like a man that crawled out of hell itself with the armor he adorned. It was still hard to believe the Naruto she's known for so long was now a being that belonged to a race far older than angels or demons and is the descendant of a man that shook the world to its very core. Though I'm just glad he's the same Naruto as before, only a bit more affectionate. That brought a smile to her face, for it was true. Naruto was more protective of her and the other two and more affectionate than he ever was. She wondered why he was, but didn't question it, for she honestly liked it, especially with how much held all of them as he told what happened to him. She loved every second of it, and she could tell Akemi and Makoto did as well if their blushes were anything to go by. "Where's Makoto-chan?" he asked, to which she just looked at him before pointing behind her. "She's in there finishing the last of the coordinates for this location for the future, just in case. Other than that, she wants to make a map of this location as well." Naruto just gave a nod of acceptance with a small smile, that is before he turned his attention back to the closing in island. He could see them already getting to the dock, but when he saw the amount of ships at the dock, he was honestly surprised him. Though when he saw one ship in particular having the sails imprinted with the name, Marine, did he narrow his eyes. Well, this will be interesting. How right he was. Logatown docks. Upon coming to the docks and tying the ship down did Naruto and the girls embark off the ship and into what they could see a town of some sort. Only from what they could already see things being sold and bought were completely different from what they've seen in the elemental nations. Food, weapons, clothes, everything was so much different. The people though weren't all that different, though maybe a few people smaller or taller than others. Though as they walked through the people did they gain much attention, mainly Naruto himself. His overwhelming figure and the pure aura he exuded made many back up in fright because of his intimidating stature. Truly it was annoying, but they didn't say anything and kept going even if some were staring at weapon upon Naruto's back with both interest from traders and blacksmiths and fear from the civilians. As they kept walking though they never did see a shadow blur from an alley, and too late to react did this blur run headlong into Naruto. Crash. OWWWW. Said a voice of a teen that looked to be in his early 20s. He was on the ground rubbing his head from the sudden impact. He wore black boots with what appeared to be white pants that covered the overtop of his boots. On up was the man's red sash. The last thing seen on him was a red long-sleeved jacket that was open, showing his naked chest. Much like Naruto himself, he had no shirt, showing his developing chest and abs. His black somewhat spiky hair was clearly seen, but the somewhat eye-catcher was the straw hat on his head with a red ribbon tied around the base of it. Naruto, who was still standing from the crash, looked down at the guy before offering his hand to him. "You okay?" To which the man froze before looking up, showing his black eyes to Naruto and his unnaturally big smile. The man grasped his hand firmly before pulling himself up, where he was standing a good 6 feet 3, just a few inches from Naruto himself. "Yo, sorry about didn't see I was going shi," he said with a laugh that made Naruto quirk an eyebrow in amusement. That is before another man came up from behind the straw hat wearing man before he outright just smashed his fist on the man's head. "Damn it, Roger, must you always go running into everybody?" said a man did the group of 4, note being in his early 30s. He being a man that had straight long pulled back brown hair with strands of gray could be seen. He wore a strangely designed shirt and dark green pants that ended just above his ankles, where he wore black boots. Rubbing the back of his head sheepishly, the man named Roger nodded. "Yeah, sorry about that, was in a rush," he said with a grin that stretched his face unnaturally so. The girls blinked blankly as Naruto just smirked at the man, seeing he was quite the amusing person, but inwardly he could feel something about him was familiar. "Please do excuse him, he can be an idiot at times. Anyway, my name's Silver's, really nice to meet you," the older man said, while Roger just grinned and pulled out his hand and spoke. "Yeah, and my name's Gold D. Roger." Hearing his name did Naruto's eyes widen so much the girls thought they would have popped out of their sockets. That was the fated day did Naruto and the girls meet Roger and Rayleigh. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.